After I signed the papers to sell my Toronto home and start a new life with my new wife, my 17-year-old son texted, "Dad, don't do this. She's not who you think. I have proof." So I met him at the library. When he showed me the screenshots, I realized I'd been living with a stranger. The notary's office smelled like old paper and lemon furniture polish. I remember that detail because I was trying to focus on anything other than the weight of what I was about to do. The pen felt cold in my hand, one of those expensive ones with actual heft to it, the kind that makes you feel like you're signing something that matters. And I was. My lawyer, Patricia, slid the final document across the mahogany table. "This is the last one, David. Once you sign here, the house is officially sold. Settlement in 30 days. The house. Our house. The place where Marcus took his first steps, where Sarah and I had our last real conversation before the cancer took her voice, where I'd painted over the pencil marks on the kitchen door frame that tracked 17 years of my son growing taller, because the real estate agent said buyers don't want to see personal history. I looked down at the address, printed in neat legal type. 147 Rosewood Drive, Toronto, Ontario. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, finished basement where Marcus learned to play guitar, backyard where we buried Sarah's ashes under the cherry tree she'd planted the spring before her diagnosis. All of it, reduced to a sale price and a closing date. "David," Patricia's voice was gentle. She'd handled Sarah's estate too. She knew what this house meant. "I'm fine." I wasn't fine, but Vanessa was waiting for me at the cafe 3 blocks away, probably scrolling through Pinterest boards of our new life in Vancouver. Our condo overlooked False Creek, floor-to-ceiling windows, modern kitchen. A fresh start, she called it. A place with no ghosts. I signed. The pen made a scratching sound against the paper, and I thought about how final things are, how a few seconds of movement can lock you into a trajectory you can't reverse. Patricia witnessed the signature. Her assistant notarized it. Just like that, I'd severed the last physical tie to the life I'd built with Sarah. "Congratulations," Patricia said, though her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "You should feel good about this. The market's been rough. You got a fair price." I nodded, shaking her hand, gathering the copies she'd prepared for me. Outside, November rain had started. That particular Toronto rain that's more like frozen mist, the kind that seeps into your bones and makes you think about mortality. My phone buzzed as I reached the sidewalk. I expected it to be Vanessa asking if I'd finished, maybe sending me a photo of the coffee she'd ordered for me. Oat milk latte, no sugar, the way she'd trained me to drink it. She said regular milk was inflammatory. She said sugar was poison. She said a lot of things, actually, and somewhere along the way I'd stopped questioning them and started just nodding along. But it wasn't Vanessa. "Marcus, Dad, don't do this." My thumb hovered over the message. Marcus hadn't texted me first in 3 months. Not since I'd told him about the engagement. Not since I'd explained that Vanessa and I were moving to Vancouver, and he was welcome to visit during breaks from university. "Visit," he'd repeated, his voice flat. "Visit the place where my father lives, like I'm a tourist." We hadn't spoken much after that conversation. He'd moved into residence at U of T early, said he needed to focus on his studies. I'd told myself it was normal. 17-year-old boys pulling away from their fathers, establishing independence. Sarah would have known better. Sarah would have pushed, would have sat him down, would have made him talk. But Sarah was gone, and I was trying to figure out how to be whole again, and Vanessa had appeared at exactly the right moment with exactly the right words, and maybe I'd been too grateful to be careful. Another message came through. "Marcus, she's not who you think." I stood there on the wet sidewalk, people flowing around me like water around a stone, their umbrellas creating a moving canopy of black and gray. The rational part of my brain, the part that had been a systems analyst for 23 years, started cataloging explanations. Marcus was hurt about the move. Marcus was acting out. Marcus was a teenager experiencing a normal amount of resistance to his father finding new love. But there was another part of me, something deeper and more primal, that went very still. Marcus, I have proof. Proof. Not opinions, not feelings. Proof. My fingers moved across the screen. What kind of proof? The reply came immediately. Meet me. Toronto Reference Library. 3rd floor, northeast corner. 1 hour. I checked my watch. Vanessa would be wondering where I was. We had dinner reservations at Canoe. She'd been talking about it all week, about how we needed to celebrate properly, about how this was the beginning of our real life together. David, I'll be there. I started walking. The library was a 20-minute walk, but I needed the time to think, to prepare myself for whatever Marcus wanted to show me. The rain picked up, soaking through my jacket, but I barely noticed. Vanessa called twice. I let it go to voicemail. She texted, "Where are you? Our reservation is at 7. I typed back. Something came up with Marcus. I'll explain later. Her response was immediate. David, we talked about this. He's manipulating you. He doesn't want you to be happy. I stared at that message for a long time. It was the kind of thing that sounds reasonable when you say it out loud. Teenagers do manipulate. They do resist change. They do sometimes act out of jealousy rather than genuine concern. But seeing it written there, the casual certainty with which she diagnosed my son's motives. I need to see him, I wrote back. I'll make it up to you. You always do, she replied, followed by a heart emoji that somehow felt like a period at the end of a very different kind of sentence. The library rose up ahead of me, all concrete and glass, a fortress of knowledge in the gathering dark. I'd brought Marcus here when he was 7, trying to find books that might help him understand why Mommy was always tired, why Mommy's hair was falling out, why Mommy couldn't pick him up anymore. The children's librarian had been kind. She'd found us stories about families going through hard things, stories where love was enough, where everything turned out okay in the end. I wondered if she had any books about men who thought they'd found second chances, but might have found something else entirely. Inside, I shook off the rain and headed for the stairs. The elevator would have been faster, but I needed the physical exertion, needed to feel my heart rate climb, needed something to focus on besides the growing dread in my chest. 3rd floor, northeast corner. Marcus was already there, sitting at a table pushed against the window. The city spread out behind him, all lights in motion and in different beauty. He'd grown since I'd last really looked at him. His shoulders were broader. His jaw had that same sharp angle Sarah's father had. He was becoming a man, and I'd been so busy trying to become someone new that I'd missed it happening. He looked up as I approached, and I saw Sarah in his eyes, that particular shade of brown, that particular way of seeing straight through to the truth of things. "Thanks for coming," he said quietly. I sat down across from him. "You said you have proof. Proof of what?" He pulled out his laptop, opened it, angled the screen away from the handful of other students scattered around the floor. His hands were shaking slightly. "Dad, I need you to understand something before I show you this. I didn't go looking for it. I wasn't trying to spy or dig up dirt or sabotage your relationship. I want you to know that." "Okay." My voice sounded calm. Inside, everything was starting to tilt. "You remember last month when Vanessa borrowed my laptop, said hers was updating and she needed to check her email?" I nodded. I'd been at the hardware store. Vanessa had been at the house, doing something with paint samples. Marcus had been home from campus for the weekend. She didn't log out of her iMessage. It synced to my computer. He took a breath. "I saw a conversation with someone named Rick." "Who's Rick?" But even as I asked, I knew. Rick was the ex-boyfriend. The one Vanessa had told me about during one of our early dates, tears in her eyes explaining how he'd controlled her, isolated her, made her feel small. How she'd finally found the courage to leave him. How meeting me had shown her what real love looked like. "That's what I wondered." Marcus said. He turned the laptop toward me. So I read the messages. The screen showed a text conversation. Green bubbles and gray bubbles, dates and timestamps. I started reading. At first, it was mundane. Updates about daily life, little jokes, the kind of casual intimacy you see between people who know each other well. Then I saw the date. September 14th. That was 2 weeks after Vanessa and I got engaged. Rick, so he actually bought you a ring? Vanessa, platinum, 2 carats. I told you he would. Rick, and the house? Vanessa, listing went up today. He signed with the agent I recommended. My guy. Rick, you're a goddamn artist. Vanessa, just playing the long game, baby, just like we planned. I stopped reading, looked up at Marcus. His face was pale, tight with tension. There's more, he said. A lot more. I looked back at the screen, scrolled up, found messages from July, from June, from March, before I'd even met Vanessa. No, that wasn't right. I'd met Vanessa in April, at a grief support group. She'd been there because her mother had died of cancer too. We'd bonded over our shared loss, over understanding what it meant to watch someone you love disappear in pieces. But here were messages from February, from January, planning something, talking about Sarah's death like it was an opportunity, like I was a mark. I felt something cold spreading through my chest, down my arms, into my fingers where they gripped the edge of the table. Dad, give me a minute. I kept reading, saw my own life laid out like a blueprint. The grief support group wasn't random. Rick had found out I was attending, had sent Vanessa there specifically. The coffee shops where we'd had our early dates, she'd chosen them because Rick had scoped them out, confirmed they had the right lighting, the right atmosphere for intimacy and confession. The weekend trip to Niagara Falls where I'd realized I was falling in love with her. Planned, scripted, designed to hit specific emotional beats. There was a message from the night I'd proposed. Vanessa, he did it. We're in. Rick, ring. Vanessa, expensive enough to be worth something. Not so expensive it raises questions about his liquidity. Rick, and he's definitely selling the house? Vanessa, already talking about fresh starts. I've been planting seeds about Vancouver. His kid goes to school here, so there's no reason to stay. Once the house sells, we'll have the wedding, I'll get half his assets in the divorce settlement, and we're done. Rick, how long you thinking? Vanessa, 2 years max, 18 months if I can swing it. Just long enough to establish the marriage, not so long I have to actually build a life with him. Rick, what if he doesn't sell? Vanessa, he will. He's drowning in grief. He'd do anything to feel less alone. Trust me, baby. I know these types. He's already bought every story I've sold him. I couldn't breathe properly. The library air felt thin, inadequate. Marcus reached across the table, his hand covering mine. Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. How long have you known? My voice came out scraped, raw. 3 weeks. I didn't know how to tell you. I tried to hint. Remember when I said maybe you should wait, take more time before making big decisions? But you seemed so happy. And I thought maybe I was reading it wrong. Maybe there was context I was missing. But you kept the screenshots. I kept the screenshots. I looked at him, really looked at him. My son, 17 years old, carrying this knowledge around for 3 weeks. Trying to protect me, trying to find the right moment to break my heart in order to save my life. Show me everything, I said. For the next hour, Marcus walked me through it. The messages went back 8 months. Rick and Vanessa had been running this kind of con for years, targeting widowers and divorcees, people in vulnerable emotional states. They'd scout victims through public records, obituaries, divorce filings. Vanessa would make contact, build trust, create intimacy. She'd move fast, but not too fast. She'd tell stories designed to mirror the mark's trauma, creating false connection. She'd identify assets and work toward marriage or access to shared finances. Then she'd disappear or file for divorce or, in one case Marcus showed me, claim abuse and walk away with a settlement. There were names in those messages. Other men, John in Calgary, Stephen in Montreal, David in Toronto, me. I was David in Toronto, and I was so textbook predictable that Vanessa had apparently told Rick she could run this one in her sleep. "There's one more thing," Marcus said. He looked sick. "Her name isn't Vanessa Wright." He pulled up a screenshot of what looked like a driver's license. The photo was Vanessa, unmistakably her, same high cheekbones, same green eyes that had looked at me with what I'd thought was love. But the name read, Michelle Cross. "I ran the name through some searches," Marcus continued. "She's got a record. Fraud in British Columbia. Dropped when the victim wouldn't testify. Another case in Alberta that got dismissed on a technicality. Dad, this is what she does. This is who she is." I sat back in the chair, the laptop screen still glowing between us, displaying evidence of my own spectacular stupidity. Sarah had been dead for 2 years and 3 months. I'd been so determined to prove I could move forward, could find happiness again, could be someone other than the grieving widower everyone tiptoed around. And I'd chosen this. I'd chosen a performance of intimacy so well crafted, I'd never questioned it. "The house," I said suddenly. "I signed the papers today. It's sold." Marcus went very pale. "Can you back out?" "I don't know. Maybe. There's usually a cooling off period, but..." I pulled out my phone, scrolled to Patricia's number. It was past 6. She might not answer. She picked up on the 3rd ring. "David, is everything okay?" "The house sale. If I wanted to cancel, is there a way?" Long pause. "What happened?" "I can't explain right now. I just need to know if I can stop the sale." "You'd lose your deposit. And if the buyers sue for specific performance, David, you'd be in breach of contract. It could get expensive and messy." "Why? What's changed in the last 3 hours?" "Everything," I thought. "Everything has changed." "Give me tonight to figure it out," I said. "I'll call you in the morning." I hung up before she could argue. Marcus was watching me carefully. "What are you going to do?" "Good question. What do you do when you discover that the woman you're engaged to marry, the woman you've been sharing a bed with for 6 months, the woman you've introduced to your friends and family and your dead wife's parents, what do you do when you discover she's been running a con on you since the moment you met?" You could confront her, scream, cry, demand answers. You could walk away, pack your things, disappear and let her wonder what happened. You could call the police, press charges, let the system handle it. Or you could do something else entirely. I looked at my son, this young man who'd protected me, who'd done the hard work of finding the truth when I'd been too blinded by my own need to see it. "Marcus," I said slowly, "how good are you at keeping secrets?" "What do you mean?" I thought about Vanessa's messages, about how carefully she'd planned this, about how she'd used my grief, my loneliness, my desperate desire to be whole again as weapons against me, about how she thought she knew exactly what kind of man I was. "I mean," I said, "that I'm not going to confront her. Not yet. Dad, she thinks I'm signing those papers tomorrow at the lawyer's office. She thinks everything is going according to plan. She thinks I'm this pathetic, predictable mark who'll do exactly what she's manipulated me to do." "You're not," Marcus said fiercely. "No," I agreed. "I'm not. And it's time she learned that." I pulled out my phone and texted Vanessa. "Sorry about tonight. Marcus needed to talk. Everything's fine. See you at home." Her response came within seconds. "Can't wait to celebrate with you tomorrow." I looked at that heart emoji for a long moment, thought about how many times she'd used that exact symbol, how many times I'd seen it, and felt warmth, felt chosen, felt loved. "Dad?" Marcus's voice was uncertain. What are you planning? I closed the laptop, stood up. My legs felt steady. My head felt clear for the first time in months. I'm planning, I said, to give her exactly what she wants, right up until the moment I don't. Outside the library, the rain had stopped. The city glittered, washed clean, full of possibility. I'd spent 2 years learning to live without Sarah, learning to carry grief like a weight I'd never put down, but might learn to balance. Now I was going to learn something else. I was going to learn how to fight back. The condo was dark when I got home, not the comfortable dark of a space waiting to be filled with life, but the calculated dark of someone who wants you to think they're asleep. I stood in the doorway for a moment, keys in my hand, listening. No sound from the bedroom. No glow from under the door. But Vanessa, Michelle, I reminded myself, her name is Michelle, wasn't asleep. She was waiting to see what kind of mood I'd be in, whether Marcus had managed to plant any seeds of doubt, whether she needed to do damage control or could just continue playing the role of supportive fiancé. I'd been married to Sarah for 18 years. I knew what it sounded like when someone was actually asleep. The particular quality of breathing, the small movements, the absolute unself-consciousness of it. This wasn't that. I set my keys in the bowl by the door, the ceramic one Vanessa had bought at that artisan market, the one she'd said reminded her of a piece her mother used to have. I wondered now if her mother was even dead, or if that was just another part of the script, another carefully crafted detail designed to create symmetry between our supposed grief, to make me feel like we were two broken people who'd found each other in the ruins. David? Her voice came from the bedroom, perfectly calibrated between sleepy and concerned. Is that you? Yeah. I kept my voice neutral, tired, the voice of a man who'd had a long day of signing away his past. Sorry I'm late. The bedside lamp clicked on. She appeared in the doorway wearing one of my old t-shirts. Another calculated choice, I realize now. The borrowed clothing that signals intimacy, that says I'm comfortable here. I belong in your space, in your life, in your future. God, I'd been so blind. How's Marcus? She crossed to me barefoot, her hair deliberately mussed. She reached up to touch my face, and I had to actively stop myself from flinching. You look exhausted. He's okay. Just needed to talk about some stuff. I let her hug me, felt her body press against mine, and fought down the wave of revulsion. University stress, I think. She pulled back, studying my face with what I'd once thought was genuine concern. Now I could see the assessment happening behind those green eyes, searching for cracks in the facade, for any sign that Marcus had told me something that might threaten her plans. Did he say anything about the move? There it was, the careful probe, testing whether Marcus had tried to talk me out of Vancouver. He's made his peace with it, I lied smoothly. Actually, he said he's been thinking about applying to UBC for grad school. Might be nice to have him closer eventually. I watched something flicker across her face. Irritation, maybe, or recalculation. Having Marcus in Vancouver wasn't part of the plan. The plan required me isolated, dependent, easier to manipulate and eventually discard. But she recovered quickly. That's wonderful, David. I'm so glad you two are working things out. The ease with which she lied was remarkable. No hesitation, no tells, just smooth assurance. I wondered how many hours she'd practiced this, how many men she'd run this routine on before me. I'm beat, I said, pulling away gently. Big day tomorrow, making it official. I know, she smiled, rising on her toes to kiss me. I let her, tasted the spearmint toothpaste she used, felt her fingers curl against the back of my neck. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright. I'm so proud of you, David. I know how hard this was, letting go of that house. Fresh starts, I said, echoing the phrase she'd used so many times. Fresh starts, she agreed. I headed to the bathroom, closed the door, stared at my reflection in the mirror. The man looking back at me seemed like a stranger, older than I remembered, tired in a way that went deeper than physical exhaustion. His wife had died. He'd signed away their home, and he'd fallen in love with a woman who saw him as nothing more than a transaction. I turned on the shower, let the water run until steam filled the room, and pulled out my phone. Marcus had texted, "You okay?" "Fine," I typed back. "Need you to send me everything. All the screenshots. Everything you found. Create a new email account she doesn't know about. And send it there. Already done. Check your spam folder. Email is from email protected." I opened my email, found the message, saw the zip file attached. Dozens of screenshots. Marcus had been thorough. I downloaded it all to my phone, then immediately deleted the email and cleared my trash. "Got it," I texted Marcus, going dark for a bit. "Don't worry. Dad, be careful. She's dangerous." "So am I wrote back. "When I need to be." I deleted our text conversation, cleared my recent calls. Vanessa had access to my phone. I'd given her the passcode months ago, another gesture of trust she'd encouraged, and I'd provided like the good, predictable Mark I was. When I came out of the bathroom, she was in bed, the covers pulled up, reading something on her iPad. The picture of domestic contentment. "Did you cancel the reservation at Canoe?" she asked, not looking up. "I'll call them tomorrow. Apologize properly." I climbed into bed beside her, maintained the careful choreography of intimacy we'd established, my arm around her shoulders, her head against my chest, the rise and fall of breathing synchronizing. "We should plan something special for after the closing," she murmured. "A real celebration. Maybe that weekend in Muskoka you mentioned." The cottage. Right. I'd told her about the cottage Sarah's parents owned, the place we'd spent summers when Marcus was young, the place I'd inherit eventually, along with the rest of Sarah's parents' estate. Of course, Vanessa would want to go there, would want to establish presence and claim and connection. "That sounds nice," I said. She tilted her head up, kissed my jaw. "I love you, David." The words hung in the air between us, 3 syllables that meant nothing to her and had meant everything to me. I thought about all the times she'd said them, in bed, over coffee, during quiet moments on the couch. I'd believed every single one. "I love you too," I said, and felt something hard and cold settle into place behind my sternum. She fell asleep eventually, real sleep this time, her breathing deepening, her body going heavy against mine. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, running through possibilities. The smart thing would be to walk away, take the evidence to the police, file a report, get a restraining order, let the system handle it. But Marcus's research had shown that the system wasn't particularly good at handling Michelle Cross. She'd slipped through before. She'd do it again, and walking away meant she won. Meant she'd gamed me perfectly, manipulated my grief, stolen months of my life, almost stolen my house, and whatever else she could have extracted before disappearing. No, I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. I waited until I was sure she was deeply asleep, then carefully extracted myself from the bed. She stirred, but didn't wake. I padded out to the living room, opened my laptop, and started doing research. Michelle Cross. Born Michelle Ann Cross in 1985 in Surrey, British Columbia. Parents divorced when she was 6. Mother remarried 3 times. Father died in a construction accident when Michelle was 12. First arrest at 16 for shoplifting. First fraud charge at 22. Convinced an elderly man she was his granddaughter and extracted $15,000 before his actual family intervened. The pattern was consistent. She targeted vulnerable people, built elaborate emotional scaffolding, extracted what she could, and disappeared. Sometimes with Rick, sometimes with other partners. She was good at it, good enough that most of her victims never pressed charges, too embarrassed or heartbroken to admit they'd been conned. I found a Facebook profile under her real name, mostly private, but with a few public photos. One showed her and Rick at a beach somewhere, his arm around her shoulders, both of them laughing. The caption read, "Partner in crime." The casual honesty of it was almost impressive. I kept digging, found old addresses, old aliases, old victims who'd posted warnings on scam alert websites. Found a blog post from a man in Edmonton who'd lost $40,000 and his grandmother's engagement ring. Found a news article about a woman in Victoria who'd pressed charges but dropped them after receiving threats. Michelle Cross was a professional. This was her career. And I was just another job. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Patricia. Couldn't sleep. Thinking about your call. If you're having second thoughts about the sale, we need to talk first thing tomorrow. There are options, but they're time sensitive." I stared at that message for a long time. The house was worth $1.2 million. After paying off the mortgage, clearing the agent's fees and legal costs, I'd walk away with roughly $780,000. Vanessa had been pushing for us to put that money into a joint investment account. For our future, she'd said. To build something together. I'd been planning to do it. Had actually scheduled an appointment with my financial advisor for next week. If I'd gone through with it, she would have had access. Would have found a way to drain it gradually or all at once. Would have destroyed me financially and disappeared before I even realized what was happening. "Thanks, Patricia," I typed back. "Let's talk at 9 a.m. I'm keeping the house." "Good," she replied. "I'll draft the cancellation notice. It won't be cheap or easy, but it's doable." "How much?" "You'll lose the deposit. $25,000. Maybe more if the buyers push back. But better than the alternative if you're sure." I was sure. The house was Marcus's inheritance, Sarah's legacy. I'd almost given it away to a woman who'd probably already picked out which furniture she'd sell when she left me. "Do it," I texted. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark living room, listening to the city breathe outside the windows. Somewhere out there, people were sleeping honestly in their beds, trusting their partners, believing in their relationships. I'd been one of those people 6 hours ago. Now I was something else. The clock on the wall read 3:47 a.m. In a few hours, Vanessa would wake up expecting me to go to Patricia's office and finalize the sale. Expecting me to come home excited, ready to celebrate, ready to take the next step toward our planned future. Instead, I was going to cancel the sale, going to keep my house, going to start dismantling her entire operation piece by piece. But I wasn't going to tell her that. Not yet. I thought about Sarah, about the way she'd fought her cancer with quiet, strategic determination. She'd researched every treatment, asked every question, made every decision with clear-eyed pragmatism. Even at the end, when there were no more treatments and no more hope, she'd been methodical. She'd planned her funeral, organized her affairs, written letters to Marcus for every birthday until he turned 25. "Don't let grief make you stupid, David," she'd told me 2 weeks before she died. We were in the hospital, the machines beeping their endless rhythm, her hand thin and papery in mine. "You're going to want to fill the emptiness. Don't fill it with the wrong things." I'd promised her I wouldn't. Then I'd broken that promise spectacularly. But maybe it wasn't too late to honor her memory in a different way. Sarah had believed in fighting back, in not letting yourself be diminished by the cruelties of the world. She would have hated Michelle Cross, would have seen through her in minutes. And she would have wanted me to make this right. I pulled up the photos on my phone, the screenshots Marcus had sent, scrolled through them again, memorizing details. The way Michelle and Rick talked about their marks, the casual cruelty, the absolute absence of empathy. There was a message from Rick dated 3 weeks ago. "You getting attached to this one?" Michelle's reply, "LOL, no. He's sweet but pathetic. Cries about his dead wife sometimes, after sex. It's actually kind of gross. Read that message 3 times. Felt something break apart in my chest. and reform into something harder, colder, more useful. She'd listened to me talk about Sarah, had held me when I cried, had told me it was beautiful how much I'd loved my wife, how that capacity for love was what made me special. And then she'd texted her partner to laugh about it. The sky was starting to lighten outside, that particular pre-dawn gray that makes cities look like watercolors. I heard Vanessa stir in the bedroom, heard the bathroom door close, heard the shower start. I got up, went to the kitchen, started the coffee maker. By the time she emerged, showered, dressed, made up, I was sitting at the counter with my laptop open, looking every bit the man about to sign away his past. "Morning," she said brightly, kissing the top of my head. "Big day." "Big day," I agreed. She poured herself coffee, added the almond milk she kept stocked, leaned against the counter. "What time is your appointment with Patricia?" 10 o'clock. "Perfect. I'll come with you. For moral support." She smiled. "We're in this together now." I looked at her standing there in my kitchen, wearing the cashmere sweater I'd bought her last month, drinking from the mug Marcus had made in pottery class when he was 9, planning to steal everything I had while pretending to love me. "You don't have to come," I said. "I know you hate legal offices." "I want to be there." She reached across the counter, took my hand. "This is a big moment for us. For our future." Our future, the one she'd planned to last just long enough to get what she wanted. "Okay," I said, "let's do it together." She squeezed my hand, and I squeezed back, and we sat there playing our roles perfectly. The grieving widower and his supportive new love, about to take the next step toward their fresh start. Except I knew the script now. And I was about to start improvising. Patricia's office was on the 14th floor of a glass tower downtown, the kind of building where everything echoed. Footsteps, voices, the quiet desperation of people signing documents that would change their lives. Vanessa held my hand in the elevator, her thumb tracing small circles on my palm, a gesture I'd once found comforting. Now I recognized it for what it was: maintenance. Keeping me calm, keeping me compliant, keeping me convinced that she was my anchor in all this upheaval. "You're quiet," she observed as we rose through the floors. "Just thinking." "About Sarah?" The ease with which she said my dead wife's name, like she had any right to it, like she hadn't been mocking my grief in text messages to her partner. I felt my jaw tighten and forced it to relax. "About everything," I said. "Endings and beginnings." She leaned her head against my shoulder. "It's okay to be sad, David. This is allowed to be hard." The elevator doors opened. Patricia's receptionist looked up, smiled professionally, and I watched Vanessa transform. Her posture shifted, slightly, shoulders back, chin up, the bearing of someone who belonged in spaces like this. She'd probably practiced it. Probably had a whole repertoire of performances calibrated for different audiences. "Mr. Chen, Ms. Wright." The receptionist gestured toward the conference room. "Patricia is expecting you." Ms. Wright. I wondered if she'd ever slipped, ever accidentally responded to her real name, or if she'd trained that instinct out of herself years ago. Patricia was waiting for us, a stack of documents on the table in front of her. She stood when we entered, shook my hand, nodded politely to Vanessa. I'd called her at 9 a.m. as promised. Had a 20-minute conversation while Vanessa was in the shower. Patricia knew what I was planning. She hadn't asked questions, good lawyers rarely do, but I'd heard the approval in her voice. "David, Vanessa, please, sit." Patricia arranged herself across from us, professional and composed. "I've reviewed everything, and I have some news." I felt Vanessa go very still beside me. "There's been a complication with the sale," Patricia continued, sliding a document across the table. "The buyer's financing fell through late yesterday. Their bank pulled the mortgage commitment." This was a lie. A very expensive lie that I'd paid Patricia $5,000 to construct, complete with falsified documents from a fictional lender. But Vanessa didn't know that. What? Vanessa's voice was sharp. That's impossible. They were pre-approved. This was a done deal. Patricia looked at her mildly. These things happen, unfortunately. The market's unstable right now. Banks are getting nervous. So what does that mean? Vanessa's hand was gripping mine now, tight enough to hurt. Can we find other buyers? We can try, Patricia said, but David and I have been discussing other options. I watched Vanessa's face carefully, saw her trying to maintain composure while calculating frantically. If the sale fell through, there was no immediate cash infusion, no joint account to siphon. The timeline of her entire con was threatened. What options? I asked, playing my part. You could keep the house, Patricia said simply. Pull it off the market. The deposit you received from these buyers would cover their breach of contract. You'd actually come out slightly ahead. But we're moving to Vancouver, Vanessa said quickly, too quickly. We already have the condo lease signed. We're starting over there. You could keep the house as an investment property, Patricia suggested. Rent it out. Toronto real estate is only going to appreciate. It would provide steady income and maintain the asset for Marcus's future. I pretended to think about this. Let the silence stretch out. Vanessa's hand was shaking slightly against mine. I don't know, I said slowly. That wasn't the plan. Plans change, David. Patricia's tone was gentle but firm. That house is worth keeping. Sarah would have wanted you to be strategic about this, not emotional. The invocation of Sarah's name made Vanessa flinch, just slightly, but I caught it. Could we have a minute? Vanessa asked. David and I need to talk privately. Of course. Patricia gathered her documents and left the conference room, closing the door behind her with a soft click. Vanessa turned to me immediately, her face arranged in careful concern. David, honey, this is a setback, but it doesn't change anything. We can find new buyers, better buyers. Patricia's right, though, I said. Keeping the house makes financial sense. It's paid off. The rental market in that neighborhood is strong, and it preserves Marcus's inheritance. We talked about fresh starts. Her voice had an edge now, the barest hint of desperation creeping through the practiced calm. About not being tied to the past. I know. But maybe we were rushing. Maybe we should take our time with this. We're not rushing. We've been planning for months. She took both my hands now, turned her body toward mine. David, I love you. I want to build a life with you. But I need to know you're all in on this, that you're not going to keep one foot in your old life. There it was. The manipulation naked and obvious now that I knew to look for it, creating a false choice between her and my past, making me prove my commitment by destroying my own financial security. I'd seen Sarah's parents use this tactic on her when she was younger. You choose us or you choose him, you can't have both. Sarah had chosen herself instead, had married me anyway, and they'd eventually come around. She taught me to recognize emotional blackmail when I saw it. I'm all in on us, I said carefully, but I'm also 45 years old with a 17-year-old son. I need to be smart about money. So you're keeping the house. Her voice had gone flat. I think I should. For now. I paused. Unless you have a reason I shouldn't? The question hung between us. I watched her wrestle with it, push too hard, and risk exposing her real motives, or back down and lose control of the situation. She chose retreat. No, you're right. I'm sorry. She manufactured a smile. I'm just disappointed. I was so excited about our new start. We can still have that, I said. The house doesn't change Vancouver, doesn't change us. Of course. She kissed me, soft and sweet, and I tasted the lie on her lips. I'm being selfish. This is about what's best for you and Marcus. Patricia knocked and re-entered. Have you made a decision? I'm keeping the house, I said. I'd take it off the market. Patricia nodded, making notes on her legal pad. I'll draft the withdrawal notice and handle the buyer's deposit return. You'll need to sign some forms, but that's straightforward. She looked up at me. I think you're making the right choice, David. Thank you. We spent the next 30 minutes signing documents, not the sale paperwork Vanessa had expected, but cancellation notices and withdrawal forms. I watched her sit there, maintaining her composure, her professional smile, while everything she'd planned unraveled. When we finally left the office, she was silent. We walked to the parking garage without speaking, the click of her heels on concrete echoing off the walls. Are you angry? I asked as we reached my car. No, she unlocked her door. Just processing. We drove back to the condo in tense silence. I could feel her recalculating, trying to figure out her next move. The house had been the centerpiece of the con. Sell it, get the money into joint accounts, drain it, disappear. Without that, she needed a new angle. My phone rang as I pulled into our parking spot. Marcus. I should take this, I said to Vanessa. Marcus has been worried about the sale. She nodded, got out of the car. I watched her walk toward the building, her posture rigid with barely controlled frustration. Marcus? Dad, how'd it go? His voice was tight with tension. The sale is canceled. The house is off the market. Holy shit. How did she react? About how you'd expect. I watched Vanessa disappear into the building. She's scrambling. This wasn't part of her plan. What if she leaves? Just cuts her losses? She won't. Not yet. I thought about the messages Marcus had shown me, about Michelle's pattern of behavior. She's invested too much time, and there are other assets she thinks she can access. Sarah's parents' estate, my retirement accounts. She'll pivot. What are you going to do? I'm going to let her think she still has a chance, I said, while I build a case that even she can't slip out of. Dad, this is dangerous. These people, I know what they are, Marcus, and I know what I'm doing. I softened my voice. Trust me on this. I do trust you. I'm just scared. Me too, I admitted. But fear is useful. It keeps you sharp. After I hung up, I sat in the car for a few minutes, gathering myself. Then I went upstairs to find Vanessa sitting on the couch, her laptop open, typing furiously. Everything okay with Marcus? She asked without looking up. Fine. He's relieved about the house, actually. Sentimental about it. She kept typing. I went to the kitchen, poured myself water, watched her from the corner of my eye. Whatever she was typing, she was focused on it with an intensity that seemed excessive for casual browsing. What are you working on? I asked. Just some emails. She closed the laptop abruptly. David, we need to talk. Here it comes, I thought. The pivot. She patted the couch beside her. I sat, keeping my expression open and trusting, the face of a man who still believed in the woman next to him. I've been thinking, she said, about our finances, about making sure we're protected. Okay. When we get married, I think we should have a prenup. This was unexpected. I blinked at her. A prenup. I know it's not romantic, she said quickly. But we both have assets. You have the house now, your retirement accounts. I have some investments from my mother's estate. This was a lie. I'd checked. There was no estate. I think we should protect each other, make sure everything is clear and legal. She was good, turning the fact that I'd kept the house into an opportunity to get legal access to my other assets. A prenup drafted by a lawyer she'd choose, with terms she'd dictate, designed to give her as much leverage as possible. I hadn't thought about that, I said slowly. I know a lawyer in Vancouver. Really good. Fair. We could set up a consultation when we get there, just to explore options. She took my hand. I want to do this right, David. I want to protect what we're building. What you're stealing, I thought. But I said, that's actually really mature. I appreciate you thinking ahead. Relief washed across her face. Yeah, let's do it. I squeezed her hand. I want us to be partners in everything. Complete transparency. Complete transparency, she echoed, and the irony of it should have choked her. That night, she was affectionate in a way she hadn't been in weeks, attentive, present, almost grateful. She'd regained the upper hand, or thought she had. The prenup would give her access, give her legitimacy, give her exactly what she needed to execute the next phase of the con. I held her afterward, listening to her breathing even out, and thought about Sarah. Sarah had believed in honesty, in direct confrontation, in laying all the cards on the table and dealing with truth head-on. But Sarah had also been a chess player, had taught Marcus the game, had shown him that sometimes the best move looks like a mistake until 3 moves later, when the whole board shifts. I was 3 moves ahead now. Vanessa thought she'd salvaged the situation, thought she'd adapted to the complication and found a new path forward. She didn't know that I was documenting everything, that Marcus was creating a digital trail of evidence, that I'd already contacted a private investigator Patricia had recommended, someone who specialized in fraud cases, someone who knew how to build prosecutable evidence. She didn't know that the lawyer she was planning to use for the prenup was going to find himself mysteriously unavailable, and that I was going to suggest my own lawyer instead, someone Patricia knew, someone who'd draft a prenup that protected me completely while appearing to give Vanessa what she wanted. She didn't know that I'd started moving my retirement accounts into trusts that she couldn't touch, that I'd locked down my credit, that I'd made myself legally bulletproof. Most importantly, she didn't know that I was documenting every lie, every manipulation, every moment of this performance she was putting on. Because when this was over, when I'd gathered enough evidence to guarantee she'd face real consequences, I wasn't just going to walk away. I was going to make sure Michelle Cross never did this to anyone else again. My phone buzzed silently. A text from the private investigator, background check, complete. You're not going to believe what I found. I deleted the message, held Vanessa a little closer, and smiled in the dark. Sarah would have approved, I thought. This was how you fought back. The private investigator's office was in a nondescript building in North York, sandwiched between a dental clinic and a tax preparation service, the kind of place you could walk past 100 times without noticing, which, I supposed, was exactly the point. I'd told Vanessa I had a meeting with my financial advisor. She'd barely looked up from her laptop, too busy researching prenuptial agreements, probably, or messaging Rick about how to salvage their operation now that the house sale had fallen through. The investigator's name was Janet Reeves. Patricia had described her as thorough, discreet, and expensive. All qualities I needed right now. She was waiting for me in a small conference room, a woman in her late 50s with steel gray hair and sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. The table between us was covered with file folders, printouts, and photographs. Mr. Chen, she stood to shake my hand, her grip firm and professional. Thank you for coming. I think you'll want to see this in person. I sat down, and she slid the first folder across to me. Michelle Ann Cross, she began. Born 1985, Surrey, BC, but you already know that. What you don't know is that she's been doing this since she was 19 years old. She pulled out a photograph. Michelle, younger, different hair color, same green eyes. That's from 2004. She and Rick Castellano, that's his real name by the way, ran a romance scam in Vancouver. Targeted a businessman named Peter Huang, 42, recently divorced, 2 kids. Michelle befriended him at a gym. They dated for 6 months, he proposed. 2 weeks before the wedding, she and Rick cleaned out his business accounts and disappeared. $340,000. Did he press charges? He tried. The money was moved through so many offshore accounts that by the time the police tracked the pattern, it was gone. Huang dropped the case after a year. Said it was destroying what was left of his life to keep pursuing it. Janet pulled out another folder. Then there's Martin Weatherly, Calgary, 2007, widower, 1 adult daughter. Michelle met him at a grief support group. The parallel to my own story made my stomach turn. She was with him for 8 months, got him to put her name on his house deed, convinced him to refinance, left with $280,000 and a collection of his late wife's jewelry that was worth another $50,000. He died of a heart attack 6 months later. The daughter believes the stress killed him. Janet kept pulling out files. Each one was a variation of the same story. Vulnerable men, elaborate emotional manipulation, significant financial theft. Some had pressed charges. None had gotten their money back. Most had been too embarrassed or too broken to fight back. "Here's the pattern," Janet said, spreading the photographs across the table like a deck of cards. Michelle and Rick work together. They scout targets through public records, obituaries, divorce filings, bankruptcy notices. They look for men with assets but also emotional vulnerability. Recent loss is ideal. Then Michelle makes contact, always in a way that seems organic. Support groups, volunteer organizations, coffee shops near the target's workplace. She's done grief support groups before. 3 times that I've confirmed. It's one of her favorite hunting grounds. Janet's expression hardened. She researches the deceased spouse extensively, learns their interests, their habits, their personality traits. Then she mirrors them just enough to create familiarity without being obvious about it. I thought about how Vanessa had loved the same authors Sarah loved, how she'd mentioned volunteering at the same hospital where Sarah had been treated, how she'd laughed at the same kinds of jokes. Details I'd thought were beautiful coincidences. How does Rick fit in? He's the coordinator. He scouts, he researches, he manages the logistics. Sometimes he poses as a brother or a business partner to vouch for Michelle's character. Sometimes he stays completely invisible. He's also her safety net. If a mark gets suspicious or aggressive, Rick handles the exit strategy. Janet pulled out a photo of Rick Castellano, mid-40s, average-looking, the kind of face you'd forget immediately. He's got a record too. Fraud, identity theft, forgery. He did 18 months in 2011. And Michelle? No convictions. She's better at avoiding direct culpability. The money never goes through her accounts. The documents aren't in her handwriting. She's always just the heartbroken girlfriend who had no idea her partner was stealing. By the time anyone realizes what happened, she's gone. I stared at the evidence spread across the table. A dozen men's lives ruined by the woman currently sitting in my condo, probably planning our wedding. "There's something else," Janet said quietly. She pulled out a final folder, this one thicker than the others. "I found someone who got away. A man in Edmonton named Trevor Gaines. Michelle targeted him in Twinkenheim, but he figured it out before she could execute. He hired his own investigator, built a case, and threatened to go to the police with everything." "What happened?" "She disappeared overnight. But Gaines was smart. He'd been documenting everything, recording conversations, saving emails. He gave me copies of his entire file." She slid the folder toward me. "David, this is a blueprint. Everything Michelle does, she's done before. The same lines, the same strategies, the same timeline. If we overlay your experience with Gaines's evidence, we can predict exactly what she's planning next." I opened the folder and started reading. Gaines had been meticulous. He'd documented every conversation, every manipulation, every moment where Michelle had pushed him toward a decision that would benefit her financially. And he was right. The patterns were identical. After the house had sold, in Gaines's case, he'd backed out at the last minute like I had. Michelle had suggested a prenup. She'd recommended a specific lawyer in the city they were planning to move to. The prenup had been designed to look protective, but actually gave her access to everything during the marriage and half of everything in a divorce. Gaines confronted her before signing, Janet explained. Played dumb, asked innocent questions that exposed the holes in her story. When she realized he knew, she and Rick were gone within 12 hours. Bank accounts closed, apartment abandoned, phones disconnected. Did he go to the police? Yes, but without actual financial harm. He caught her before she stole anything. There wasn't enough for charges. The case went nowhere. Janet leaned forward. But David, you're in a different position. She's already committed fraud by using a false identity. You have evidence of conspiracy to commit theft. And if we can prove she's done this before, establish the pattern, we can build a RICO case. RICO? That's organized crime, which is exactly what this is. Michelle and Rick run an ongoing criminal enterprise. They have a pattern of behavior, a consistent methodology, multiple victims across multiple jurisdictions. If we can get the right prosecutor interested, we can put them both away for a long time. I sat back in my chair, processing this. What do I need to do? Keep playing along. Let her think the prenup is happening. In the meantime, I'll coordinate with law enforcement. The RCMP has a financial crimes unit that would be interested in this, and the FBI has been tracking cross-border romance scams. If I can connect Michelle and Rick to their U.S. victims, and I found at least 2, we can make this federal. How long will that take? Weeks, maybe a month. Can you maintain the performance that long? I thought about lying next to Vanessa every night, pretending to love her, pretending to trust her. Thought about the constant vigilance required to not slip, not reveal what I knew. I can do it. You're sure? Because if she suspects anything, she'll run. And if she runs before we have the case built, she'll do this to someone else. I'm sure. Janet studied me for a long moment. Most people in your position want immediate confrontation. They want the satisfaction of exposing the lie right away. I want her in prison, I said simply. I want her to face consequences she can't charm or manipulate her way out of. I want every man she's done this to know that she didn't get away with it. Then we're aligned. Janet started gathering the files. I'll need you to document everything going forward. Every conversation, every text message, every interaction. If she gives you access to her laptop or phone again, let me know immediately. I can get a forensic analyst to pull deleted data. Marcus already got screenshots of her. Messages with Rick. That's good, but we need the originals if possible. Authenticated digital evidence that can't be disputed in court. She handed me a business card with just a phone number on it. This is a secure line. Call me if anything changes or if you feel unsafe. You think I'm in danger? Rick has a history of violence when their cons are threatened. Nothing serious, intimidation mostly. A few assault charges that got pleaded down. But you should be aware. I pocketed the card, stood to leave. At the door, I paused. All those other men, the ones in your files, do they know you're doing this? Some of them. I tracked down the ones I could find, told them we might have a shot at justice. Most were interested. A few want nothing to do with it. Too painful to revisit. Janet's expression softened slightly. But they all appreciated knowing that someone was fighting back. That Michelle Cross hadn't just disappeared into the wind to ruin someone else's life. Tell them I'm going to finish this. I will. I drove back to the condo with my mind racing. A RICO case, federal charges, real prison time. The scope of what we were building felt massive, almost overwhelming. But underneath the anxiety was something else. A cold, focused anger that felt almost cleansing. Vanessa was in the kitchen when I got home, cooking dinner. The smell of garlic and herbs filled the apartment. She'd put on music, jazz, something Sarah had loved. Another stolen detail, another manufactured intimacy. Hey, you, she smiled at me over her shoulder. How was the meeting with the financial advisor? Good. Productive. I set down my keys, my wallet, maintaining the routine. We talked about retirement accounts, investment strategies. Anything I should know about? The question was casual, but I heard the probe underneath it. He suggested moving some assets into a trust for Marcus's future. This was true, actually. Patricia had recommended it, and I'd already started the process. Tax advantages, estate planning, that kind of thing. I watched for her reaction. A trust would put assets out of her reach, would complicate her access even with a prenup. That's smart, she said slowly, though we should probably coordinate that with the prenup discussion, make sure everything aligns. Good point. I moved behind her, wrapped my arms around her waist, felt her lean back against me. The domesticity of it would have been comforting once. Now it felt like a costume we were both wearing. When do you want to talk to that lawyer you mentioned? Soon. Maybe next week. She turned in my arms, kissed me. I want everything settled before the wedding. I want us to start our marriage with complete clarity. Complete clarity. The phrase would have been funny if it wasn't so grotesque. Me too, I said, and kissed her back, tasting the wine she'd been drinking while she cooked. We ate dinner at the small table by the window, the city sparkling below us. She told me about her day, a yoga class, a phone call with a friend, probably Rick, errands she'd run. All of it could have been true or could have been completely fabricated. I had no way to know anymore, and the uncertainty was exhausting. After dinner, I helped her clean up, then excused myself to take a shower. In the bathroom, with the water running, I pulled out my phone and started documenting. November 21st, 6:47 p.m. V suggested coordinating prenup with trust establishment, clearly attempting to maintain access to assets despite trust structure. Mentioned wanting complete clarity before wedding. Ironic, given entire relationship is based on deception. I was building a timeline, a narrative that would help prosecutors understand the systematic nature of her manipulation. Janet had emphasized the importance of this, showing not just what Michelle had done, but how calculated and deliberate every step had been. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. How's it going? Maintaining cover. I typed back. Meeting with investigator was productive. This is bigger than just us. What do you mean? Tell you when I see you. How's school? Can't focus. Keep thinking about all this. I know, but you did the right thing telling me. You saved me. There was a long pause. Then, Dad, I'm really proud of you. Mom would be too. I stared at that message until the screen blurred. Sarah would have hated that I'd been fooled in the first place, but she would have understood the fight back, the methodical dismantling of Michelle's operation. Sarah had always said that the best revenge was living well, but sometimes, I thought, the best revenge was making sure the people who hurt you faced consequences. I finished showering, dried off, found Vanessa already in bed, reading on her iPad. You okay? She asked as I climbed in beside her. You seem distant tonight. Just tired. Long day. She set down the iPad, turned toward me. David, I need to know you're still happy. About us. About everything we're planning. The vulnerability in her voice was pitch perfect. I wondered how many hours she'd practiced that particular tone. I'm happy, I lied, just adjusting to all the changes. Change is hard, she said softly, but we're doing it together. That's what matters. Together, I agreed. She kissed me goodnight, settled into sleep beside me. Within 20 minutes, her breathing had deepened, regular and unconscious. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Trevor Gaines and Martin Weatherly and Peter Huang and all the other men whose lives Michelle had passed through like a hurricane, leaving destruction in her wake. Not this time, I thought. This time, the hurricane is going to hit a wall, and that wall was going to be me. The lawyer Vanessa wanted me to meet was named Douglas Parrish. His office was in Vancouver, gleaming and expensive, all glass and chrome with a view of the harbor that probably cost more than most people's annual salaries. We'd flown out for a long weekend. Vanessa's suggestion, of course. She wanted to scout neighborhoods, look at furniture for the condo, start building our life there. But really, I knew she wanted to get the prenup signed while I was disoriented and excited about the move, before I had time to think too carefully about what I was agreeing to. Mr. Chen, Ms. Wright. Douglas Parrish stood to greet us, all polished charm and practiced warmth, Mid-50s, expensive suit, the kind of smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Please sit. Can I get you coffee? Water?" "We're fine," Vanessa said quickly, settling into the chair across from his desk. She'd dressed carefully for this meeting, professional but not severe. The kind of outfit that said, "I'm reasonable, I'm trustworthy, I'm here to protect everyone's interests." I'd done my homework on Douglas Parrish. On the surface, he was legitimate, member of the BC bar, 20 years of experience in family law, decent reviews online. But when Janet had dug deeper, she'd found something interesting. 3 of Michelle's previous victims had signed prenups drafted by lawyers who later faced disciplinary action for conflicts of interest or ethical violations. Douglas Parrish had never been formally disciplined, but he'd been investigated twice for allegations that he'd favored one party in supposedly neutral agreements. Both investigations had been dropped due to lack of evidence. Janet's theory was that Michelle had a network of lawyers she could rely on, not quite corrupt, but willing to bend the rules for the right price or the right motivation. "So," Parrish began, pulling out a legal pad, "Vanessa tells me you two are getting married soon. Congratulations." "Thank you," I said, "and you want to establish a prenuptial agreement to protect both parties' assets going into the marriage. Very sensible, very mature." He looked between us. "Now, the first thing we need to do is establish full financial disclosure. David, I'll need documentation of all your assets, bank accounts, investments, real estate, retirement accounts, any trusts or inheritances you're expecting." "Of course." I pulled out the folder I'd prepared. I brought statements for everything. This was where it got interesting. The statements were real, but they didn't tell the whole story. Over the past 2 weeks, working with Patricia and my actual financial advisor, I'd been quietly restructuring everything. The retirement accounts had been moved into an irrevocable trust with Marcus as the sole beneficiary. The house was now in a family trust that couldn't be touched in a divorce. My liquid assets had been reduced to about $50,000 in accessible accounts, enough to seem legitimate, not enough to be worth stealing. Everything else was locked down in structures that would take years and multiple lawyers to penetrate. But the statements I handed to Parrish showed the accounts as they'd existed 3 weeks ago, before the restructuring. On paper, I looked like exactly the kind of target Michelle specialized in: substantial assets, relatively unsophisticated financial planning, vulnerable to the right kind of legal maneuvering. Parrish reviewed the documents, making notes. I watched his eyes light up slightly when he saw the retirement account balances. Over $800,000, except those accounts didn't exist anymore, not in any form he could access. "This is helpful," he said. "Vanessa, I'll need the same from you." She pulled out a much thinner folder. "I don't have quite as much. My mother's estate was mostly spent on her medical care. But I have some savings, a small investment portfolio." I'd seen these statements before. She'd shown them to me weeks ago as part of establishing transparency in our relationship. Janet had checked every account number. They were all fake. The banks existed, the routing numbers were valid, but the actual accounts belonged to other people or didn't exist at all. It was a masterful forgery, convincing enough to pass casual inspection, designed to make her look financially responsible without actually committing to any specific numbers that could be verified. Good, good. Parrish made more notes. Now, let's talk about the structure of the agreement. The standard approach is to keep premarital assets separate. What you bring in, you keep if the marriage ends. Any assets acquired during the marriage would typically be split 50-50 unless you want to specify different terms. That seems fair, Vanessa said quickly. We both want to protect what we built before we met, but anything we build together should be shared. I nodded as if considering this. What about the house in Toronto? That was acquired before we met, but it's a significant asset. That would remain yours, Parrish said, though if Vanessa contributes to its maintenance or improvement during the marriage, she might have a claim to the increased value. That makes sense, I said. I watched Vanessa's face. She was trying not to look too pleased. The house she couldn't force me to sell would still be partially accessible through this back door, or so she thought. What about spousal support? I asked. If we divorce, would either of us owe the other anything? Parrish glanced at Vanessa. That depends on the length of the marriage, the income disparity, various factors. Did you want to waive spousal support entirely, or set specific terms? I don't want David to feel obligated to support me if things don't work out, Vanessa said, her voice soft and reasonable. But I also think we should be realistic. If we're married for, say, 5 or 10 years, and one of us has sacrificed career opportunities to support the other. She trailed off, letting the implication hang. This was the real play. She was setting up a scenario where she could claim she'd given up career opportunities, which didn't exist, to support our marriage, which she planned to destroy, and therefore deserved compensation. We could structure it so that spousal support only kicks in after a certain number of years, Parrish suggested, and cap it at a specific amount or duration. What would you recommend? I asked, playing the role of the financially unsophisticated client who needed guidance. Well, given your assets and income, if the marriage lasted more than 3 years, a court might typically award support of around $3,000 to $4,000 per month for a duration of half the length of the marriage. We could agree to something less than that, say $2,000 per month, to limit your exposure while still being fair to Vanessa. I did the math. If Michelle stayed married to me for 3 years, which matched the timeline in her messages to Rick, she'd be entitled to $2,000 a month for 18 months. That's $36,000. Add in her claim to half the marital assets, which would be minimal since I was locking everything down, and she'd still walk away with less than $50,000. Nowhere near the hundreds of thousands she was expecting. That seems reasonable, I said. We spent another hour going through details. Parrish drafted an outline of the agreement, promised to have a full version ready for review within a week. As we left his office, Vanessa was practically glowing. That went well, she said in the elevator. I really like Douglas. He seems fair. He does, I agreed. And you're okay with everything we discussed? You don't feel like I'm trying to take advantage? The directness of the question was almost admirable. She was inoculating me against suspicion by voicing it herself, making it seem absurd that I could ever think such a thing. Of course not, I said. I think we're being smart, protecting both of us. She kissed me, there in the elevator, and I let her, feeling nothing but a cold determination to see this through. That night, in our hotel room overlooking False Creek, I waited until Vanessa fell asleep and then slipped into the bathroom with my phone. I called Janet's secure line. It's me, I said quietly. The meeting happened. And the prenup is designed to give her access to assets and spousal support, but not in any way that's obviously one-sided. It looks fair on the surface. Did you sign anything? No. He's drafting the full agreement. Said it would be ready in a week. Don't sign it, Janet said. Not yet. I'm still building the case and I need more time. How much time? I've made contact with the RCMP. They're interested, but they want to coordinate with the FBI since some of the victims are American. That takes time. I'm also trying to locate Rick Castellano. He's been careful about his digital footprint, but I found a property record in Burnaby that might be his. Vanessa wants the prenup signed before we set a wedding date. Stall. Tell her you want your own lawyer to review it first. That's completely normal and won't raise suspicions. Okay. David, there's something else. Janet's voice shifted, became more serious. I found another victim, recent. A man in Seattle named Christopher Wade. Michelle and Rick targeted him 6 months ago, around the same time they started targeting you. My stomach dropped. She was running 2 cons simultaneously. Looks like it. Wade is a software engineer, divorced, 1 kid. Michelle met him at a conference. They've been dating long distance. She told him she was a graphic designer working remotely from Vancouver. Janet paused. He's planning to propose next month. Jesus. I reached out to him, showed him the evidence. He didn't believe me at first. Got angry, actually. Accused me of being a scam artist myself. Did you convince him? Eventually. I sent him screenshots of Michelle's messages with Rick, showed him the pattern with other victims. He's devastated but cooperative. He's agreed to document everything on his end and testify if we need him. 2 marks at once. The sheer audacity of it was almost impressive. Michelle had been splitting her time between me in Toronto and Wade in Seattle, maintaining 2 completely separate lives, 2 completely separate performances. Does she plan to marry both of us? I asked. I don't think so. My guess is she was hedging her bets, seeing which Mark would be more profitable, more cooperative. You became the primary target when you started talking about selling the house. Wade's assets are mostly tied up in stock options that don't vest for another 2 years. So I'd won the lottery of being the easier victim. Lucky me. Where does this leave us? I asked. Wade's evidence helps. It shows ongoing criminal activity, multiple victims, a clear pattern of fraud. Between Wade, the historical victims I've documented, and your case, we're building something the RCMP can't ignore. But you need more time. I need more time, she confirmed. Can you hold out? Keep playing the role? Through the bathroom door, I could hear Vanessa's breathing, deep and even. She was dreaming, probably. Dreaming of the money she thought she was going to steal, the life she thought she was going to destroy, the clean getaway she thought she was going to make. I can hold out, I said. However long it takes. After I hung up, I stood in the bathroom for a long time, staring at my reflection. The face looking back at me seemed harder than it had a month ago, more angular, more determined. Sarah used to say I had kind eyes. I wondered if she'd recognize them now. I thought about Christopher Wade in Seattle, reeling from the same revelations I'd faced. About all the other men in Janet's files, the ones who'd been destroyed by Michelle's cons and never recovered. About how many more there would be if I didn't finish this. The next morning, Vanessa woke up cheerful and energized. She wanted to tour neighborhoods, look at houses we might buy in a few years, start planning our future. We spent the day walking through Commercial Drive, Kitsilano, Mount Pleasant. She pointed out coffee shops we could become regulars, at parks we could walk through on Sunday mornings, restaurants where we'd celebrate anniversaries. All of it was fantasy. She had no intention of building a life with me, but she painted the picture so vividly, with such apparent sincerity, that if I hadn't known the truth, I would have believed every word. That was her real talent, I realized. Not the forgery or the legal maneuvering or even the theft. Her real talent was making people believe in a future that didn't exist, making them invest emotionally in a story she had no intention of living out. What do you think? She asked as we stood on an overlook in Queen Elizabeth Park, the city spread out before us. Can you see us being happy here? I looked at her, really looked at her. The sunlight caught her hair, highlighted the delicate bones of her face. She was objectively beautiful and completely hollow. I can see it, I lied. She smiled, squeezed my hand. Good, because I can't wait to start our real life together, David. Away from all the ghosts, all the sadness. Just us, building something new. Just us, I echoed. That night, flying back to Toronto, Vanessa fell asleep against my shoulder. I stayed awake, watching the darkness outside the plane window, thinking about justice and revenge and the fine line between them. Sarah had believed in justice, in systems and laws, and the idea that truth eventually wins. But Sarah had also believed in fighting for what mattered, in not letting yourself be diminished, in standing up, even when it was hard, even when it hurt. I was fighting now, for myself, for Marcus, for all the men Michelle had destroyed. And I wasn't going to stop until she was in handcuffs. Marcus was waiting for me at the same table in the Toronto Reference Library, 3rd floor, northeast corner. It had become our place, neutral ground where we could talk without Vanessa's presence hovering over everything. He looked tired, thinner than he'd been a month ago, shadows under his eyes that reminded me painfully of Sarah during her worst treatment cycles. "Dad." He stood to hug me, and I held on maybe a beat too long. "You eating enough?" "Mom's in my head," he said with a weak smile. "I hear her voice every time I skip a meal. Marcus Chen, your body is not a garbage disposal. Feed it properly." The imitation was perfect. Sarah's particular mix of exasperation and love. It made my chest ache. We sat down. Marcus pulled out his laptop. "I've been monitoring her messages. She and Rick are getting nervous." "About what?" "About you stalling on the prenup. Look." He turned the screen toward me. "Rick, he get his lawyer to review it yet?" "Vanessa. Says he wants to. I told him Parrish is representing both of us, that it's neutral, but he's insisting." "Rick, that's bad. His own lawyer might actually read the fine print." "Vanessa. I know. I'm working on it. Told him we don't want to waste money on two lawyers, that it shows we don't trust each other." "Rick, is he buying it?" "Vanessa. I think so. He's still being accommodating, still saying yes to everything, but something feels different. He's quieter, more distant." "Rick, you think he knows?" "Vanessa. No, impossible. I've been careful, but I think the kid might still be in his ear. I should have worked harder to isolate him from Marcus." "Rick, want me to come to Toronto, apply some pressure?" "Vanessa. Not yet. I can handle it. If he's getting cold feet, I just need to remind him why he fell for me in the first place." I felt Marcus watching me as I read. "What does that mean? Remind him why he fell for me?" "It means she's going to escalate the performance," I said quietly. "Become more affectionate, more vulnerable. Maybe manufacture a crisis that requires my support. Whatever it takes to pull me back in." "That's sick." "That's business. To her." I scrolled further through the messages. Is there anything about Wade, the guy in Seattle? "Yeah, actually." Marcus navigated to a different conversation thread. "She's trying to juggle both of you. Look at this from 3 days ago. Rick, Wade's getting impatient. Wants to know when you're moving to Seattle." "Vanessa. I told him January, after I close out the Toronto situation." "Rick, what if Chen drags this out? Wade's not going to wait forever." "Vanessa. Then I pivot to Wade. Chen's got more liquid assets, but Wade's got those stock options. If I can get him to marry me before they vest, I'm positioned for half." "Rick, you can't marry both of them." "Vanessa. Obviously, but I can get engaged to both, extract what I can from each, and choose who to actually go through with based on who's more profitable, or just take what I can get from both and disappear." "She's treating you like stock picks," Marcus said, his voice tight with anger. "Like you're just portfolio options she's comparing." "I know. How are you so calm about this?" I looked at my son, 17 years old, brilliant and sensitive, and so much like his mother. "I'm not calm. I'm furious. But fury without strategy is just noise. Sarah taught me that." Marcus nodded slowly. "When she was sick, when the insurance company tried to deny her treatment. She didn't scream at them. She documented everything, built an ironclad case, and threatened them with a lawsuit they couldn't win. They approved the treatment within a week." I closed the laptop. "That's what I'm doing now, building a case Michelle can't slip out of." "The investigator, Janet. How's that going?" "She's coordinating with law enforcement, RCMP, FBI. It's slow, but it's happening." I paused. "There's something I need to tell you. Janet found other victims. A lot of them. We're building a pattern of behavior case that goes back almost 20 years. Marcus's eyes widened. 20 years? Michelle's been doing this since she was 19. Different names, different cities, but the same methodology. She's destroyed lives, Marcus, plural. I met his eyes. Which is why I can't just walk away. She needs to be stopped. But you're in danger. If she realizes you know, she won't. I'm being careful. And Janet's got law enforcement ready to move if anything goes wrong. Dad. Marcus. I reached across the table, gripped his hand. You saved me. You found the truth when I was too blind to see it. Now let me finish this. Let me make sure she never does this to anyone else. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, what do you need from me? Keep monitoring her messages. Let me know if anything changes. If she starts planning to leave. If Rick comes to Toronto. If there's any indication she's suspicious. And Marcus, I squeezed his hand. Take care of yourself. Eat. Sleep. Go to your classes. Don't let this consume you the way it's consuming me. It's already consuming me, he said quietly. I can't stop thinking about it. About how she was in our house, sleeping in the bed you shared with Mom, pretending to care about me. I let her hug me, Dad. I made her coffee. I actually liked her for a while. She's good at what she does. That's not your fault. I should have seen it sooner. Hey. I waited until he looked at me. You saw it when it mattered. That's what counts. We sat there for a while, father and son, bonded by shared betrayal and the determination to fight back. Around us, students studied and worked, oblivious to the drama playing out at our corner table. Finally, Marcus asked the question I'd been dreading. Are you going to tell Grandma and Grandpa? Sarah's parents? Sarah's parents, Richard and Ellen Wu. They'd loved me like a son, had supported me through Sarah's death, had made it clear that I was still family, that Marcus and I would always be family. How was I supposed to tell them I'd almost married a con artist? That I'd been so desperate to fill the void Sarah left that I'd fallen for the first person who paid attention to my grief? I don't know, I admitted. Eventually, yes, but not yet. They're already dealing with so much. Ellen had been diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's 6 months ago. Richard was her primary caretaker, and the stress was wearing him down. Adding my disaster to their plate felt cruel. They'd want to know, Marcus said gently. Grandma especially. She's still sharp enough to help. I know, but let me get through this first. Once Michelle is arrested, once it's over, I'll tell them everything. I promise. Marcus nodded, not entirely satisfied, but willing to accept it. Okay, but Dad, when this is done, you need to take some time, like serious time, to figure out who you are without grief driving every decision. The wisdom in that statement coming from my 17-year-old son nearly broke me. I will, I promised. I will. That night, Vanessa executed exactly the strategy her messages had predicted. I came home to find the condo transformed, candles everywhere, soft music playing, the smell of my favorite meal cooking. She'd even opened a bottle of the wine Sarah and I had saved for special occasions, the one I had been too sentimental to drink after she died. Surprise, Vanessa said, appearing from the kitchen in a dress I'd never seen before. I thought we needed a proper celebration, for getting the house situation settled, for the prenup progress, for everything coming together. The wine felt like a violation, but I kept my expression neutral, pleased, touched. This is amazing, I said. You've seemed stressed lately. Distant? She crossed to me, put her arms around my neck. I wanted to remind you why we're doing all this, why we're worth fighting for. There it was, the exact language from her messages to Rick. Remind him why he fell for me in the first place. You didn't have to do all this, I said. I wanted to. She kissed me, slow and deliberate. David, I know the last few weeks have been complicated. The house, the prenup, all the logistics of combining our lives. But none of that matters as much as this, as us. We ate dinner by candlelight. She asked about my day, told funny stories about hers, probably fabricated, refilled my wine glass repeatedly. The performance was flawless, attentive without being clingy, affectionate without being desperate. exactly calibrated to make me feel seen and valued. If I hadn't read her messages, hadn't known this was pure manipulation, I would have been completely disarmed. After dinner, she pulled me to the couch, curled against me, ran her fingers through my hair. "I've been thinking," she said softly, "about the wedding. I don't want to wait too long. I know we said spring, but what if we did it sooner? January, maybe. Something small and intimate. Just us and the people who matter most." January. That was the timeline in her messages. Close out Toronto by January, move on to Wade in Seattle, or disappear entirely. "That's fast," I said carefully. "I know. But David, life is short. Your time with Sarah taught you that, right? We don't know how much time we get. I don't want to waste it on long engagements and elaborate planning. I just want to be your wife." The invocation of Sarah's death, weaponized as an argument for rushing into marriage with her. The audacity of it stole my breath. "I love that about you," I said, the words tasting like ash. "Your spontaneity, your willingness to take leaps. So you'll think about it, January?" "I'll think about it." She kissed me, deeper this time, her hands moving with clear intent, and I responded, because that's what she expected, because maintaining the cover required me to play every scene convincingly. But inside, I was somewhere else entirely. I was thinking about Janet Reeves, coordinating with law enforcement. About Christopher Wade in Seattle, documenting his own evidence. About all the victims coming together finally to stop the woman who'd destroyed their lives. Later, when Vanessa slept beside me, I went to the bathroom and called Janet's secure line. "She's pushing to move up the wedding," I told her quietly once. "January instead of spring. That's the pressure I warned you about. She's sensing your hesitation and trying to lock you down before you can think too carefully." "How close are we to making the arrest?" "The RCMP wants to coordinate with the FBI. Rick Castellano has moved money across the border, which makes this federal, but federal cases move slowly. We're looking at another 3 to 4 weeks minimum." "I don't know if I can do this for another month." "David," Janet's voice was firm, "I know this is hell, but if we move too soon, Michelle will slip away again. She's done it before. We need the case airtight." "And if she runs before then?" "She won't. She's too invested in you and Wade. She thinks she's in control. As long as you maintain that illusion, she'll stay." I thought about the candles, the wine, the carefully staged intimacy, the exhausting performance I had to maintain every single day. What if I just tell her no, to January, to the rushed wedding? You can, but be prepared for her to escalate again, maybe manufacture a crisis, a health scare, a financial emergency, something that requires immediate commitment from you. So I'm trapped. You're not trapped. You're playing the long game. And you're winning, David. Every day you maintain this, every piece of evidence we gather, we're building a case that will put her away for years. That's the prize. Keep your eyes on it. After I hung up, I stood in the dark bathroom, staring at my reflection again. The man looking back at me seemed like a stranger. Harder, more damaged, changed in ways that might be permanent. Sarah's voice echoed in my head. "Don't let grief make you stupid, David." But I had. I'd been so stupid, so desperate, so convinced I could outrun my pain by running toward someone new, and now I was paying for it. Not just with money or time, but with pieces of myself I wasn't sure I'd ever get back. I thought about what Marcus had said, that I needed to take time after this, to figure out who I was without grief driving my decisions. He was right. But first, I had to finish what I'd started. I had to make sure Michelle Cross never destroyed another life. The crisis came on a Tuesday. I was at work, sitting through a meeting about system upgrades that required exactly 0% of my attention, when my phone buzzed. Vanessa's name lit up the screen. "Vanessa. David, I need you to call me. It's urgent." My first thought was that she knew. That somehow, despite all my precautions, she'd figured out I was building a case against her. My second thought was that this was exactly the manufactured emergency Janet had predicted. I excused myself from the meeting, found an empty conference room, and called her. She answered on the first ring, her voice choked with tears. "David, oh my God, I'm so glad you called. What's wrong? What happened?" She broke off, sobbing. The performance was exceptional. "It's my brother. He's been in an accident, a car accident in Vancouver. He's in the hospital, David. They're saying he might not make it." Brother? In all the months we'd been together, Vanessa had never mentioned having a brother. "I didn't know you had a brother," I said carefully. "We're not close. We had a falling out years ago, after our mother died. But David, he's all I have left. I need to go to Vancouver. I need to see him before—" Another sob, this one catching in her throat with perfect timing. "I'm sorry. I know this is sudden. I know we have so much going on here, but I have to go." "Of course you do," I said, my mind racing. "When's the next flight?" "There's one in 3 hours. But David, I can't afford the ticket right now. I used most of my savings for the condo deposit, and I don't get paid until Friday, and—" There it was, the financial emergency, the crisis that required my immediate intervention, my immediate commitment of resources. "How much is the ticket?" $800. It's last minute, so it's expensive. But I have to go. I have to see him. I'll transfer the money right now. What's your account number? She gave it to me, one of the fake accounts she'd shown me during our transparency conversation. I wrote it down, promised to send the transfer immediately, told her I loved her and to keep me updated. The moment I hung up, I called Janet. She just hit me with a family emergency. Brother in a car accident in Vancouver. Needs $800 for a flight. "There is no brother," Janet said immediately. "I've run her family tree 6 ways. She's an only child. Her father's dead. Her mother's in a care facility in Surrey with advanced dementia." "So this is the crisis you predicted." Classic move. Create urgency, create emotional leverage, extract money. $800 is small enough that you won't hesitate, but large enough to test your willingness to provide financial support during an emergency. What do I do? Send the money, but send it to a real account this time. Ask her for her actual banking information. Say the account number she gave you isn't working or something. Force her to give you legitimate details we can trace. I called Vanessa back. She answered immediately, still crying. "David, I tried to send the transfer, but the account number isn't going through. Can you double-check it for me?" There was a pause, just a heartbeat, but I heard the recalculation happening on the other end of the line. "Oh God, I must have given you the wrong one. I'm so scattered right now." She recited a different number. This one, I suspected, might actually be real. A temporary account she could drain and close, but real nonetheless. "Got it. Sending it now." I transferred the money from my checking account, the one I'd deliberately kept accessible, with just enough in it to seem legitimate. Every transaction was being documented, every interaction recorded. Janet had given me software that automatically backed up all my calls and texts to a secure cloud server. "Thank you," Vanessa breathed. "Thank you so much. I don't know what I'd do without you. Keep me updated about your brother. I'll be thinking of you." After we hung up, I sat in that empty conference room for a long time, staring at my phone. A brother who didn't exist. A crisis manufactured to extract money and test my compliance. Sarah's wine opened and poured as if it meant nothing. January wedding dates designed to rush me into legal entanglement before I could think clearly. How many times could one person be fooled before they stopped being a victim and started being complicit in their own destruction? My phone rang. Marcus. "Dad, did you see Vanessa's messages to Rick?" "I've been dealing with her fake emergency. What's happening?" "She just texted him about the Vancouver trip. Here, I'm sending you the screenshot." My phone buzzed. I opened the image. Vanessa. "Operation Brother in Crisis is a go. He sent $800 without hesitation. Rick, told you it would work. Easy money. Vanessa, I'm actually going to Vancouver, though. Might as well kill two birds. See Wade, check on the Burnaby property, maybe scout some new targets. Rick, you think Chen suspects anything? Vanessa, no. He's completely bought in. The wine trick worked. He got emotional, opened up about Sarah again. I swear these widowers are all the same. So desperate to fill the void they'll believe anything. Rick, when are you coming back? Vanessa, few days. I'll tell Chen my brother is stable. Keep the emotional leverage active. By the time I get back, he'll be so grateful I'm okay that he'll agree to anything, including a January wedding. I closed my eyes. The wine had been a trick. The entire evening, the intimacy, my vulnerability, all of it had been weapons she'd used against me, and then laughed about with her partner. Dad, you still there? Yeah, I'm here. Are you okay? No. The honesty felt like relief. No, Marcus, I'm not okay, but I will be, once this is over. She's going to Seattle, to see Wade. I know. Should we warn him? Janet already has. He knows what she is now. He's documenting his interactions, too. This is insane, Dad. How does she keep track of all the lies? Good question. How did Michelle maintain separate lives, separate stories, separate performances for multiple people simultaneously? The logistics alone were staggering. Practice, I said. She's been doing this for 20 years. It's not a con to her anymore. It's a career, a profession she's mastered. I hate her, Marcus said quietly. I've never hated anyone before, but I hate her. I know. Me too. After work, I went home to the empty condo. Vanessa had texted twice from the airport. Updates about her brother's condition, invented. Messages about how much she appreciated my support, lies. Reassurances that she'd be back soon, calculated. I poured myself a glass of whiskey. The good stuff. The bottle Sarah and I had bought on our 15th anniversary, and sat by the window watching the city lights. My phone rang. Janet. The account she gave you is real, she said without preamble. It's registered to a shell company in Richmond, BC. I traced the business registration. It lists Rick Castellano as the director. This is probably where they funnel money between cons. Can you get records? Working on it. The RCMP is getting a warrant, but David, this is good. You just gave us a direct financial link between Michelle and Rick's criminal enterprise. This strengthens the RICO case significantly. She's in Vancouver, going to see Wade. I know. He texted me. He's planning to confront her, wants to record the conversation, get her on tape admitting to the con. That's dangerous. I told him that. He's angry, wants justice. I get it. Janet paused. Actually, his anger might be useful. If he confronts her and she runs, that could trigger the whole operation to collapse. She and Rick might make mistakes when they're panicking. Or they might disappear and we lose them. That's the risk. But we have eyes on them now. I've got a contact with the Vancouver PD monitoring the situation. If Michelle bolts, we'll know. I took a long drink of whiskey. How much longer, Janet? How much longer do I have to do this? The FBI wants to make their move in 2 weeks. They're coordinating with RCMP and local police in 3 jurisdictions. This is big, David. When we move, we're taking down their entire operation, bank accounts, properties, everything. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Can you hold out that long? I thought about going to bed alone tonight, knowing Vanessa was in Vancouver with another Mark. Thought about her return, the performance she'd put on, the gratitude and vulnerability she'd manufacture to bind me closer. Thought about January and the wedding that would never happen. I can hold out, I said. The next 3 days were strange. The condo felt different without Vanessa's presence. Larger somehow, but also more honest. I could breathe without wondering what she was calculating, what angle she was working. Marcus came over for dinner the second night. We ordered pizza and sat on the couch like we used to, before Sarah got sick, before grief rewrote our lives. "This is nice," Marcus said quietly. "Just us." "Yeah." I looked at my son, so much older than 17, aged by loss and now by the burden of protecting me. "I'm sorry you got pulled into this." "Don't apologize. I'm glad I found out. Glad I could help." He picked at his pizza. "Dad, when this is over, what are you going to do?" "What do you mean?" "I mean about dating, about finding someone. Are you going to try again?" The question hit harder than I expected. "I don't know, Marcus. Right now, the thought of trusting anyone feels impossible. But you can't let her ruin that for you. Mom wouldn't want that. Your mother would want me to be smarter, more careful." "No." Marcus shook his head firmly. "Mom would want you to be happy. She told me that, near the end. Made me promise to make sure you didn't spend the rest of your life alone." I stared at him. "She said that?" "Yeah. We had a conversation, just the two of us, the week before she died. She knew you'd struggle, knew you'd feel guilty about moving on, but she said life was for the living, and she wanted you to live fully." He met my eyes. "She also said to make sure you didn't rush into anything stupid, though. So I guess I half failed on that promise." "You didn't fail anything. You saved me. From one person. But Dad, eventually you'll need to save yourself. From the grief, from the fear, from all of it. That's the part I can't help with." We sat in silence for a while, the weight of that truth settling between us. Finally, I asked, "What about you? How are you processing all this?" "Therapy," he said simply. "I started seeing a counselor at school. Figured if I was carrying around all this stuff about Vanessa and you and Mom, I should talk to someone professional." "That's really mature, Marcus. I learned from the best." He smiled sadly. "Mom was big on therapy. Remember how she made us all go to family counseling when she got diagnosed?" I remembered. Sarah had insisted, not because we were falling apart, but because she wanted to give us tools to survive what was coming. Even dying, she'd been thinking ahead, trying to protect us. "She'd be proud of you," I said. "She'd be proud of both of us, fighting back instead of just taking it." My phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa. "Brother is stable. They think he'll make a full recovery. I'm so relieved. Thank you for being there for me. I love you so much." I showed Marcus the message. "When did she supposedly send that?" I checked the timestamp. 20 minutes ago. Marcus pulled out his laptop, navigated to the message monitoring software. "Want to see what she really sent 20 minutes ago?" He turned the screen toward me. A message to Rick. "Wade is being weird. Asked me a bunch of questions about my family and my career. I think someone got to him. We might need to cut this one loose." "She knows Wade is suspicious," I said, "which means she might come back to Toronto sooner than planned. Might push harder on you." Marcus closed the laptop. "Dad, be ready. The next few days are going to be intense." He was right. Vanessa came home 2 days later, late at night, exhausted and emotional. She collapsed into my arms at the door, crying about how scared she'd been, how seeing her brother in the hospital had reminded her how fragile life was. I held her, stroked her hair, made comforting sounds while thinking about Christopher Wade in Seattle, documenting his own near miss with this woman. "I don't want to wait," she said into my chest. "For the wedding, David, I want to marry you now, as soon as possible. Life is too short for long engagements." "Okay," I said softly. "Okay, we'll do it soon." She pulled back, looked up at me with tear-bright eyes. "Really? Really, January. Small ceremony, just us and the people who matter." Her smile was radiant, triumphant. She kissed me like she meant it, and I kissed her back, and we stood there in the doorway, playing our roles perfectly. But I was counting days now. 13 more days until the FBI made their move. 13 days until Michelle Cross's carefully constructed life came crashing down around her. I could last 13 days. I had to. The wedding planning began in earnest. Vanessa threw herself into it with an energy that would have been touching if it wasn't so calculated. She showed me venues online, small, affordable places that wouldn't require huge deposits. She talked about simple flowers, intimate guest lists, practical dresses that could be worn again. Everything designed to look like genuine desire for a meaningful ceremony while actually minimizing her financial investment in a wedding that would never happen. I was thinking maybe we could do it at the courthouse, she suggested one evening, curled beside me on the couch with her tablet full of Pinterest boards. Then just have a nice dinner with Marcus and a few close friends. Nothing elaborate. What do you think? Courthouse wedding. Quick, legal, binding. Exactly what she needed to establish the marriage for future financial claims. That sounds perfect, I said. Intimate. Just about us. Exactly. She kissed my cheek. I don't need a big production, I just need you. My phone buzzed. A text from Janet. Can you talk? I need to take this, I told Vanessa. Work thing. She nodded absently, already scrolling through more wedding inspiration that meant nothing to her. I went into the bedroom, closed the door, called Janet. We're moving up the timeline, she said immediately. The FBI is ready to move. They want to make the arrest this Friday. Friday. That was 4 days away. What changed? Christopher Wade confronted Michelle yesterday, recorded the whole conversation. She didn't explicitly confess, but she said enough, confirmed details that only match the con we've documented. Combined with everything else we have, the FBI feels confident they can make charges stick. Did she run? Not yet, but she's spooked. She told Rick they need to accelerate the Toronto timeline, close out your con within the next week and move on. We think she's planning to push for an immediate courthouse wedding, drain whatever she can access, and disappear. I looked at the closed bedroom door, behind which Vanessa was planning our fake wedding with manufactured enthusiasm. She just suggested a courthouse ceremony this week. Perfect. Say yes, but don't actually schedule anything. We'll have her in custody before any wedding can happen. What's the plan for the arrest? Coordinated takedown. Vancouver PD will grab Rick at his Burnaby property. We'll take Michelle here in Toronto. The FBI will simultaneously freeze all their known accounts and seize their assets. By the time they realize what's happening, the entire operation will be dismantled. You want me to be here when she's arrested? Yes. We need you to keep her in place, unsuspecting, until the officers arrive. Can you do that? I thought about Vanessa sitting in my living room, planning a fake wedding, counting down the days until she could destroy my life. I can do that. David, Janet's voice softened. I know these last few weeks have been hell, but you should know what you've done, the evidence you've helped us gather. It's going to save other people. The FBI is looking at expanding the investigation to include other victims across North America. This could be the case that finally stops her. Good. Are you okay? Really? Was I okay? I'd spent 6 weeks living with a woman I now knew was a professional criminal. I'd shared a bed with her, kissed her, played the role of loving fiancé while documenting every lie. I'd let her use my grief as a weapon against me, let her mock my dead wife in text messages to her partner. I'll be okay, I said, once she's in handcuffs. After I hung up, I sat on the edge of the bed for a long moment, gathering myself. 4 more days, 96 hours of performance, of maintaining the illusion, of pretending I was the naive widower she thought she was playing. I could do this. When I returned to the living room, Vanessa was on the phone. She looked up, smiled at me, held up one finger. Just a minute. I know, she was saying into the phone. But it's complicated. No, I'll explain when I see you. Thursday. That should work. Okay, love you too. She hung up, and I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Who was that? Oh, just my friend Dana. From Vancouver. She's coming to visit this week. Vanessa's expression was perfectly casual. Is that okay? I know we're busy with wedding planning, but I haven't seen her in months. Friend Dana. There was no friend Dana. I'd seen Vanessa's phone contacts during one of her careless moments. The list was suspiciously short for someone who claimed to have a rich social life. Of course, I said, I'd love to meet her. She's a little intense, Vanessa warned, standing to refill her wine glass. Very protective of me. She might grill you a bit. Make sure you're good enough for her best friend. This was Rick. It had to be. Rick coming to Toronto to assess the situation, to make sure I wasn't suspicious, to provide backup if Vanessa needed to accelerate the exit strategy. I pulled out my phone and texted Janet. She says a friend named Dana is visiting Thursday. I think it's Rick. Janet's response came within seconds. Confirmed. Rick Castellano booked a flight to Toronto under the name Dana Wolf. He's done this before. Poses as a female friend to get close to the mark. We'll have surveillance on him the moment he lands. My hands were shaking slightly. I set down the phone, forced myself to breathe normally. You okay? Vanessa asked, returning to the couch. You look pale. Just tired. Work has been crazy. She set down her wine, turned to face me fully. David, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Here it comes, I thought. She's testing me, seeing if I'll crack under direct questioning. Okay, I said carefully. Are you having second thoughts? About us? About the wedding? About any of this? No. Why would you think that? You've just seemed distant lately. Distracted. I keep feeling like you're somewhere else. Her eyes searched my face. If you're not ready for this, if you need more time, I need to know. I can't go through with a wedding if you're not completely sure. The performance was exquisite. Vulnerable, but not desperate. Concerned, but not accusatory, giving me an out while simultaneously testing whether I'd take it. I'm sure, I said, reaching for her hand. Vanessa, these last few months have been chaotic. The house, the move planning, work stress, it's a lot, but I'm not having second thoughts about you, about us. Promise? Promise. She studied me for another long moment, then seemed to relax. Okay, good, because I can't imagine my life without you now, David. You've given me hope again. After my mom died, after everything fell apart, I thought I'd never feel whole again. But you changed that. Every word was a lie, every gesture calculated. And I sat there, holding her hand, looking into her eyes, matching her performance with one of my own. You changed things for me too, I said. Sarah's death left this void, this emptiness I didn't think could ever be filled. But you showed me it's possible to love again, to build something new. We sat there, two actors in our separate plays, both lying with complete conviction. That night, after she fell asleep, I went to the bathroom and called Marcus. Rick is coming to Toronto, I told him. Thursday, posing as Vanessa's friend Dana. Jesus, is that safe? Janet says they'll have surveillance, and it's only 2 days before the arrest. We're in the endgame now, Marcus. How are you holding up? 1 day at a time, 1 hour at a time, honestly. Do you need me to come over? I can skip class tomorrow, keep you company. The offer touched me more than I could articulate. No, stay in school, live your life. I'll be okay. Dad? Yeah? When this is over, when she's arrested and it's all done, promise me you'll actually process it, that you won't just bury it and pretend you're fine. I promise. After I hung up, I stood in the dark bathroom, staring at my reflection again. The man looking back at me seemed like a stranger who was slowly becoming familiar. Harder. Yes. More damaged. But also stronger in ways I hadn't anticipated. Sarah had fought her cancer with methodical determination. She'd researched every treatment, asked every question, made every decision with clear-eyed pragmatism. Even when the odds were impossible, even when hope was a lie, people told to make themselves feel better, she'd fought with everything she had. I was fighting now, not against cancer, but against a different kind of disease. Human predation, calculated cruelty, the systematic destruction of vulnerable people for profit. And I was going to win. The next 3 days were a masterclass in controlled tension. Vanessa oscillated between excited wedding planning and manufactured emotional vulnerability. She'd talk about centerpieces and then suddenly get tearful about her brother's accident, about how fragile life was, about how grateful she was to have found me. I played the supportive fiancé perfectly, attentive, reassuring, completely committed, all while documenting everything. Every conversation recorded, every text message backed up, every moment preserved as evidence. Wednesday night, Vanessa announced she was picking up Dana from the airport the next morning. "I'll probably be gone most of the day," she said. "Girl time, you know, catching up. But I thought maybe we could all have dinner together tomorrow night. You, me, and Dana. I really want her to meet you." "I'd like that," I said. After she fell asleep, I texted Janet. "Dinner tomorrow with Rick Dana. What's the protocol? Play along. Be yourself. We'll have audio surveillance running. And David, Rick will be assessing you, looking for any signs you're suspicious. Be careful. I will be. One more day. Then this is over. One more day." Thursday morning, I went to work like normal, sat through meetings, reviewed code, pretended my life wasn't about to implode in the best possible way. At lunch, I met Marcus at a coffee shop near campus. "You ready for tonight?" he asked. "As ready as I can be." "What's the arrest plan?" "Janet says they'll move Friday morning. Early. Simultaneous raids in Toronto and Vancouver. By the time Vanessa wakes up, it'll be over." Marcus stirred his coffee, not drinking it. "I want to be there. When it happens." "Marcus, I'm not asking. I'm telling you. I want to be there. I found the evidence. I've been monitoring her messages for weeks. I deserve to see this through." He was right. This had started with Marcus protecting me. It seemed only fair he got to see the resolution. "Okay," I said. "You can be there." That evening, I came home to find Vanessa and Dana already at the condo. Dana was exactly what I expected. Average height, nondescript features, the kind of person you'd forget 5 minutes after meeting them. But the eyes were sharp, assessing, calculating. Rick Castellano in a wig in women's clothing. "David." Vanessa stood, pulling me into a hug. "This is Dana. Dana, this is my fiancé." Dana shook my hand, her grip firmer than expected. "So you're the famous David. Vanessa's told me so much about you. All good things, I hope." "Only good things." Dana's smile didn't reach her eyes. "She says you've been incredibly supportive, especially with the whole brother situation. Testing me, seeing if I'd noticed any inconsistencies in Vanessa's story about her non-existent brother. Family emergencies are tough," I said easily. "I'm just glad her brother is recovering." We had dinner at a nearby restaurant, Italian, Vanessa's choice. Dana asked me questions throughout the meal about my work, my past, my relationship with Vanessa. All of it phrased casually, but I recognized the interrogation for what it was. Rick was looking for cracks, for any sign I was suspicious, any hint that their operation had been compromised. I gave him nothing. I talked about my job with mild enthusiasm. I mentioned Sarah naturally, spoke about her with the kind of affection that seemed healthy rather than obsessive. I described meeting Vanessa as a stroke of unexpected luck, a second chance I hadn't thought I'd get, all while knowing that by this time tomorrow, both of them would be in custody. "You really love her," Dana said at one point, watching me closely. "I really do," I lied. Across the table, Vanessa beamed at me. "I'm so lucky," she said softly. After dinner, we said goodnight to Dana at her hotel. Vanessa and I walked home through the cold November streets, her arm linked through mine. "Dana likes you," she said. "That's important to me. Her opinion matters." "She seems great." "She is. She's been through a lot, and she's very protective of the people she loves." Vanessa looked up at me. "Having her approval means everything." Rick's approval. The criminal partner giving his blessing to continue the con. "I'm glad I passed the test," I said lightly. Vanessa laughed. "It wasn't a test, but yeah, you definitely passed." That night, lying in the dark with Vanessa asleep beside me, I thought about tomorrow, about the moment when police would arrive at the door, about the look on her face when she realized the game was over, about finally being free of this nightmare. My phone buzzed silently, a text from Janet. "Everything is in place. Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. Be ready." I was ready, more than ready. I was counting the hours. I didn't sleep. How could I? Vanessa lay beside me, breathing peacefully, completely unaware that in a few hours her entire world would collapse. I watched the ceiling, watched the shadows shift as headlights from the street below swept across the room and counted down the minutes. 5:17 a.m., 43 minutes until the police arrived. 5:28 a.m., 32 minutes. At 5:45, I carefully extracted myself from the bed. Vanessa stirred, but didn't wake. I went to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, stared at my reflection one last time as the man who'd been living this lie. By noon, I'd be someone different, someone on the other side of this nightmare. My phone buzzed. "Janet. Team is in position. Officers will knock at 6 hunk exactly. Stay calm. This is almost over." I texted Marcus. "Where are you?" "Coffee shop across the street. I can see your building. Janet says 6 hunk. I'll be watching." I made coffee, hands surprisingly steady. The simple domesticity of it felt surreal, measuring, grounds, pouring water, listening to the machine burble and hiss while knowing that everything was about to detonate. At 5:52, Vanessa emerged from the bedroom, wrapped in my robe, hair tousled. "You're up early," she murmured, moving to kiss my cheek. I let her. One last performance. "Couldn't sleep," I said. "Too much on my mind." "Wedding jitters?" She smiled, reaching for a coffee mug. "Something like that." She was pouring coffee when the knock came. 6 sharp raps. Official. Authoritative. Vanessa froze, mug halfway to her lips. "Who would be here at this hour?" "I'll get it," I said. I opened the door to find 4 police officers, 2 men, 2 women, all in tactical gear. Behind them, Detective Sarah Chen from the Toronto Police Service Fraud Division, wearing a blazer and an expression of grim satisfaction. "David Chen?" Detective Chen asked, though she knew exactly who I was. We'd spoken on the phone twice over the past week, coordinating details. "Yes, we have a warrant for the arrest of Michelle Ann Cross, also known as Vanessa Wright. Is she on the premises?" "I'm right here." Vanessa's voice came from behind me, sharp with confusion. "What is this? What's happening?" Detective Chen stepped into the apartment. The other officers followed, fanning out with practiced efficiency. "Michelle Ann Cross, you are under arrest for fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit theft over $5,000. You have the right to retain and instruct counsel without delay." "What?" Vanessa's face went white. "There's been a mistake. My name is Vanessa Wright. I don't know who Michelle Cross is. Ma'am, please turn around and put your hands behind your back." I watched as one of the officers approached Vanessa, Michelle, and she backed away, eyes wild, searching for an escape route that didn't exist. "David." She turned to me, desperation replacing the confusion. "David, tell them there's been a mistake. Tell them who I am." I looked at her, really looked at her. This woman who'd studied my grief like a textbook, who'd copied Sarah's mannerisms, who'd lain beside me every night for 6 months, planning how to destroy me. "I know exactly who you are," I said quietly. Michelle. The realization hit her face like a physical blow. I watched her process it. The understanding that I knew, that I'd known, that everything she'd thought was under control had been a trap closing around her. You... She couldn't finish the sentence. The officer was already turning her around, pulling her arms behind her back, snapping on handcuffs. Michelle Ann Cross, Detective Chen continued, reading rights from a card. You have the right to a reasonable opportunity to contact a lawyer and to be informed of available legal aid and duty counsel services. Do you understand? Michelle didn't answer. She was staring at me, and I saw the exact moment the mask cracked completely. The vulnerability, the warmth, the manufactured love, all of it fell away, leaving something cold and calculating and absolutely furious. How long? She asked, her voice like ice. Since the library, I said. Since Marcus showed me your messages. Marcus, she laughed, sharp and bitter. The kid. I should have worked harder to isolate you from him. You should have picked a different target entirely. Detective Chen stepped between us. Ma'am, you need to come with us now. We have additional officers executing a search warrant for this residence. Mr. Chen, you'll need to step outside while we process the scene. I grabbed my jacket, my phone, my wallet. At the door, I paused and looked back. Michelle was standing in the middle of my living room in handcuffs. Police officers already beginning to photograph and document evidence, her entire operation coming apart at the seams. She met my eyes one last time. You think you've won, she said, but you're still a pathetic, grieving widower who was so desperate for love he fell for the first person who paid attention. That's all you'll ever be. The words were designed to wound, to leave one last mark, but they bounced off me like rain off glass. And you're going to prison, I said. For a very long time. I walked out. Marcus was waiting in the lobby, his face pale but his eyes bright with something like vindication. I saw them bring her down, he said. She looked... He broke off, searching for words. Broken, I supplied. She looked broken. Yeah. We stood there in the lobby of my building, watching through the glass doors as they loaded Michelle into a police cruiser. The sun was just coming up, painting the city in shades of gold and pink. My phone rang. Janet. They got Rick too, she said without preamble. Vancouver PD grabbed him at his apartment 30 minutes ago. He tried to run, made it 3 blocks before they tackled him. He's in custody now. What happens next? The FBI is executing search warrants on all their known properties and financial accounts. They'll process the evidence, build the formal charges. You'll need to give an official statement, probably testify at trial eventually. But David, it's over. The active threat is over. I felt something in my chest loosen, something I'd been holding tight for weeks. Thank you, I said, for everything. You did the hard part. You maintained the cover, gathered the evidence, made the case. I just coordinated. She paused. How are you feeling? I don't know yet. Ask me in a few days. After I hung up, Marcus and I walked to a nearby diner. It was the kind of place Sarah had loved. Vinyl booths, laminated menus, coffee that came in heavy ceramic mugs. We ordered breakfast neither of us had much appetite for. What are you going to tell Grandma and Grandpa? Marcus asked, pushing eggs around his plate. The truth. All of it. I took a sip of coffee. They deserve to know, and I need to stop hiding from my own mistakes. It wasn't a mistake to try to find happiness again. No, but it was a mistake to do it without thinking clearly, without being ready. I set down my mug. Your mom would have seen through Michelle in 5 minutes. Mom had good instincts about people. The best. We sat in silence for a while, the diner filling up with early morning commuters and shift workers. Normal people living normal lives, untouched by the drama that had consumed us for weeks. What are you going to do now? Marcus asked finally. Go home. Wait for the police to finish processing the scene. talk to lawyers, give statements, handle all the legal aftermath. I paused. And then, I think, I'm going to take some time. Really process everything. Figure out who I am now. You're still Dad. You're still you. I'm a different version of me. Harder, less trusting. I met his eyes. But maybe that's not entirely bad. Maybe I needed to learn that people can be cruel, that not everyone deserves the benefit of the doubt. Just don't let her make you cynical. That would be letting her win in a different way. Wise beyond his years, my son. Sarah would have been so proud. My phone buzzed. A text from Patricia, my lawyer. Saw the news. Are you okay? Do you need legal representation? I'm okay. We'll call you later to discuss. Another text, this one from Sarah's father, Richard. David, Ellen, and I saw something on the news about an arrest at your building. Please call us. We're worried. I called them immediately. Richard picked up on the first ring. David, what's happening? The news is saying something about a fraud arrest at your address. It's a long story, Richard. Can I come see you and Ellen this afternoon? I need to tell you both in person. Of course. We'll be here. After breakfast, Marcus went to class and I went back to the condo. The police had finished their evidence collection. The place felt violated, emptied of something essential. I walked through rooms that suddenly felt unfamiliar, looking at furniture we'd chosen together, pictures we'd arranged, all the little touches that had made this place feel like ours. Except it had never been ours. It had been a stage set, carefully constructed for a performance that was now over. I started packing Michelle's things, her clothes, her toiletries, the books she'd never actually read, the photos she'd staged. All of it went into boxes, evidence of a life that had never been real. In the back of her closet, I found a locked box, small, nondescript, the kind you could buy at any office supply store. I should have left it for the police. But curiosity got the better of me. I found the key in her jewelry box, taped to the underside of the lid, amateur spy tradecraft, and opened it. Inside, multiple driver's licenses with different names and photos, credit cards in names I didn't recognize. A small notebook filled with what looked like target profiles, names, addresses, asset summaries, vulnerability assessments. My entry was on page 17. David Chen, 45, widower, wife died of cancer 2 years ago. One son, 17, away, at university, software engineer, stable income. Assets, house in Toronto, estimated value 1.2 million, retirement accounts, 800K, life insurance payout from wife's death, 500. Emotional vulnerability, high. Isolation, moderate. Son is somewhat protective. Target readiness, 8-10. Projected timeline, 6 to 8 months. Projected yield, 600 or 800K. I was a line item, a business opportunity, a number on a spreadsheet. I took photos of everything in the box, then called Detective Chen. I found something you'll want to see, I said. That afternoon, I drove to Richard and Ellen's house in Mississauga, the house where Sarah had grown up, where we'd spent countless Sunday dinners, where Ellen still kept Sarah's room mostly unchanged, a shrine to the daughter she'd lost. They were waiting for me on the porch. Ellen, fragile and sharp-eyed despite the Alzheimer's that was slowly stealing her memories. Richard, solid and dependable, the kind of man who fixed things with his hands and his quiet steadiness. I told them everything. About meeting Michelle at the grief support group. About the relationship, the engagement, the plan to sell the house and move to Vancouver. About Marcus discovering the truth. About the 6 weeks I'd spent documenting her crimes, while pretending to be the fool she thought I was. Ellen cried. Richard sat very still, his jaw working, his hands clenched into fists. When I finished, there was a long silence. Sarah would have been furious, Ellen said finally. Not at you, at that woman, at what she tried to do. I know. But she would have been proud of how you fought back, Richard added. That took courage, David. Living with that knowledge, maintaining the deception, that took real strength. I'm not sure it was strength, maybe just stubbornness. Sarah was stubborn too, Ellen said, smiling through tears. It's why she survived as long as she did, pure stubbornness and will. We sat together in their living room, surrounded by photos of Sarah, childhood pictures, wedding photos, snapshots of our family when Marcus was young. Evidence of a life fully lived, honestly lived, even if it had ended too soon. What now? Richard asked. What do you need from us? Nothing. Just, I needed you to know, needed to be honest with you. I almost made a terrible mistake, almost dishonored Sarah's memory by, stop. Ellen's voice was sharp, cutting through my self-recrimination. You didn't dishonor anything. You tried to move forward. That's what Sarah wanted. That you got targeted by a criminal doesn't make you weak or foolish. It makes you human. Ellen's right, Richard said. You were vulnerable, and someone exploited that. But you figured it out. You fought back, and you protected yourself and Marcus. That's what matters. I stayed for dinner. We talked about Sarah, about Marcus, about anything except Michelle. For a few hours, I let myself be surrounded by people who loved me without agenda, without calculation, without any motive, beyond genuine care. It felt like oxygen after weeks of suffocating. Driving home that night, my phone rang. Detective Chen. We found more victims, she said. The notebook you found, combined with Rick's computer files. There are at least 15 other marks across North America. Some completed cons, some in progress, some just in the planning stages. The FBI is contacting all of them. How many completed? 8 that we can confirm. Total theft, over $3 million. $3 million. 15 lives disrupted or destroyed. All of it methodical, calculated, executed with cold efficiency. There's something else, Detective Chen continued. Christopher Wade, the Seattle victim, he wants to thank you. Said knowing someone else fought back gave him the courage to do the same. He's planning to testify, help us build the strongest case possible. Good. The prosecutor is confident we can get serious time. 10 to 15 years, maybe more if we can make the RICO charges stick. Michelle and Rick won't be running cons on anyone for a very long time. After I hung up, I sat in my car outside the condo building, looking up at the windows of my home. The place I'd almost lost, the life I'd almost destroyed. Tomorrow, I'd start the real work of healing, of processing what had happened, of figuring out who I was now, post-Sarah, post-Michelle, just me. But tonight, I let myself feel the victory, small, fragile, but real. I'd won, 6 months later. The courthouse in downtown Toronto was all marble and echoes, the kind of building designed to make you feel the weight of justice bearing down. I sat in the gallery, Marcus on one side, Janet Reeves on the other, watching as they brought Michelle Ann Cross into the courtroom. She looked different. Smaller somehow, though objectively she was the same height she'd always been. The orange jumpsuit stripped away, all the careful styling, all the calculated presentation. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. No makeup, no performance. Just Michelle, facing the consequences of 20 years of systematic predation. She didn't look at me as they led her to the defendant's table. Or maybe she did, and I didn't notice. I'd stopped caring about what Michelle thought, or felt, or wanted months ago. The judge entered. We all stood. The Crown versus Michelle Ann Cross and Richard James Castellano, the clerk announced. This was the sentencing hearing. The trial had happened 3 months ago, a week-long affair that had been covered extensively in the press. Romance scam artists face justice, the headlines had read. Widow targets finally get their day in court. The jury had deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts: fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, multiple counts across multiple jurisdictions. Rick had tried to make a deal, offered to testify against Michelle in exchange for a reduced sentence, but the prosecution had enough evidence without his testimony. They'd turned him down. Now, both of them were here to learn how long they'd spend in prison. The prosecutor stood, a woman named Andrea Liu, who'd built the case with methodical precision. Your Honor, the Crown is recommending a sentence of 12 years for Ms. Cross and 10 years for Mr. Castellano. These crimes were sophisticated, calculated, and caused severe financial and emotional harm to multiple victims across 2 countries over a span of nearly 2 decades. She proceeded to lay out the damage. 15 confirmed victims, over $3 million stolen, lives destroyed, families torn apart, men driven to depression, financial ruin, even suicide in one case. Martin Weatherly in Calgary, who died of a heart attack his daughter believed was brought on by the stress of Michelle's betrayal. The Crown has prepared victim impact statements, Liu continued. Several victims are here today to address the court directly. Christopher Wade went first, the Seattle software engineer who Michelle had been running simultaneously with me. He approached the podium with visible nervousness, cleared his throat, and began to read from prepared remarks. I'm a logical person, he said. I work in technology. I solve problems for a living. I thought I was too smart to fall for a con. But Michelle Cross didn't target my intelligence. She targeted my loneliness, my grief, my fundamental human need for connection. His voice cracked slightly. She made me believe I'd found something real. That after my divorce, after years of feeling like a failure, someone actually saw me and loved me. When I learned it was all a lie, I lost more than money. I lost my ability to trust, to believe that genuine connection was possible. He looked directly at Michelle, but I want her to know that she didn't win. I'm still here. I'm still capable of love and trust. It's harder now, but I'm rebuilding. And seeing her held accountable helps me believe that there's justice in the world. He stepped down. 3 other victims followed, men from Montreal, Calgary, and Vancouver, each telling similar stories of manipulation and betrayal. Then it was my turn. Marcus squeezed my hand as I stood. You've got this, Dad. I walked to the podium, my prepared statement folded in my pocket. But when I got there, I realized I didn't need to read it. The words came naturally. Your Honor, my name is David Chen. Michelle Cross entered my life 2 years after my wife died of cancer. I was vulnerable. I was lonely. I was trying to figure out how to be whole again after losing the person who'd been my partner for 18 years. I paused, gathering my thoughts. Michelle didn't just steal from me. She studied my grief like a textbook. She researched my late wife and mirrored her personality traits. She used my son as leverage to isolate me from my support system. She turned the most painful experience of my life into a weapon to use against me. Now I looked at Michelle. She was staring at the table in front of her, refusing to meet my eyes. But here's what she didn't understand. Grief made me vulnerable, yes, but it also made me strong. Watching my wife fight cancer with dignity and determination taught me that you don't give up. You don't let cruelty win. You fight back. I looked back at the judge. My son discovered the truth about Michelle before she could complete her con. Together, we built a case that not only stopped her from hurting me, but prevented her from hurting the next victim. And the one after that. For that, I'm grateful. I took a breath. I'm asking the court to impose the maximum sentence allowed by law, not out of revenge, but because Michelle Cross is a career criminal who has spent 2 decades perfecting the art of destroying vulnerable people. She needs to be stopped. Permanently. I returned to my seat. Marcus put his arm around my shoulders. After all the victims' statements, Michelle's lawyer stood to make his case for leniency. He painted a picture of a troubled woman, herself a victim of childhood trauma and difficult circumstances. He talked about rehabilitation, about second chances, about the potential for redemption. The judge listened impassively. Then Michelle herself stood to address the court. Her lawyer had probably advised against it, but Michelle couldn't resist one final performance. "Your Honor," she began, her voice soft and contrite. "I know I've done terrible things. I've hurt people who didn't deserve it. I wish I could explain what drove me to this, but I don't have a good answer. I was broken, and I broke others in turn." She glanced toward the gallery, toward where the victim sat. "I want to apologize to everyone I've harmed. I know my words can't undo the damage, but I am truly sorry. It was a good performance, maybe even one of her best, but it rang hollow. There was no genuine remorse in it, just calculation. One last attempt to manipulate, to garner sympathy, to reduce her sentence. The judge saw through it too. "Ms. Cross," she said, her voice cold and precise. "I've reviewed the evidence in this case extensively. I've read the victim's statements. I've considered the arguments for leniency, and I find your contrition unconvincing." Michelle's face went pale. "You operated a criminal enterprise for nearly 20 years, the judge continued. You systematically targeted vulnerable individuals and caused immeasurable harm. The psychological sophistication of your crimes, the callousness with which you executed them, and your complete lack of genuine remorse convince me that you pose a continuing danger to society." She looked down at her notes. "On the charge of fraud over $5,000, I sentence you to 8 years imprisonment. On the charges of identity theft, I sentence you to 4 years, to be served consecutively. On the conspiracy charges, I sentence you to 3 years, to be served consecutively. Total sentence, 15 years. A ripple went through the courtroom. 15 years was more than the prosecution had asked for. "Mr. Castellano," the judge said, turning to Rick, "you received 12 years on similar charges, taking into account your slightly less extensive criminal history." The gavel came down. It was over. Outside the courthouse, press cameras waited. Janet had warned me they would be there. Had asked if I wanted to make a statement. I declined. This wasn't about public vindication. It was about justice. But Christopher Wade approached me on the courthouse steps, hand extended. "David Chen, I wanted to thank you in person." We shook hands. "You don't need to thank me. We helped each other." Still, knowing someone else fought back, that I wasn't alone in this, it made all the difference. He smiled, sad but genuine. "We should stay in touch. Maybe form a support group. God knows there aren't many resources for men who've been through this kind of thing." "I'd like that." We exchanged numbers. As he walked away, Janet appeared at my elbow. 15 years, she said. "That's a good outcome, David. Better than I expected." "It is." "How are you feeling?" I thought about it. Lighter, like I've been carrying something heavy and I finally got to put it down. That's exactly what closure looks like. She squeezed my arm. "You did good work here. You should be proud." After she left, Marcus and I stood on the courthouse steps, watching people stream past us. Lawyers, plaintiffs, defendants, all of them carrying their own stories of justice sought and sometimes found. "Mom would be proud," Marcus said quietly. "You think?" "I know. She always said the best revenge was living well, but I think she'd make an exception for making sure a predator faced consequences." We walked to a nearby park, found a bench overlooking the lake. It was early May, the city coming alive with spring, trees budding and flowers pushing up through the earth. "I've been seeing someone," I said suddenly. "A therapist, for the past 4 months." Marcus looked at me, surprised. "Yeah? That's good, Dad." "She's helping me work through everything. The grief about your mom, the betrayal with Michelle, figuring out who I am now." I paused. "She says I spent so much time trying not to feel the pain of losing Sarah that I made myself vulnerable to someone who exploited that avoidance." "That makes sense. I'm learning to sit with difficult emotions, to not run from them or try to fill the emptiness with something external." I looked at my son. "I'm learning to be okay being alone, to not need someone else to feel complete." "How's that going?" It's hard, but I'm getting there. I smiled. Your mom was my partner for 18 years. We built a life together, raised you together, faced her death together. That kind of partnership doesn't get replaced. It just is part of my history, part of who I am. You don't have to be alone forever, though, Dad. Eventually, when you're ready. Eventually, when I'm ready, but not now. I put my arm around him. Right now, I'm focusing on being a good father, being honest with myself, rebuilding trust in my own judgment. We sat in comfortable silence, watching sailboats on the lake, joggers on the path, couples holding hands, and families with young children. Normal life, continuing all around us. I got into grad school, Marcus said after a while. University of Toronto, computer science. I find out about funding next week. Marcus, that's amazing. I was thinking I'd stay in Toronto, be close to you, and Grandma and Grandpa. Family, you know? Family. The word settled into place with a rightness I hadn't felt in months. I'd love that, I said. But only if it's what you want, not because you're worried about me. It's what I want. This is home. You're here. Mom's here. He gestured vaguely at the city, meaning the cemetery where we'd scattered Sarah's ashes, the memories we'd made, the life we'd built. I'm not ready to leave yet. Then stay. We'll figure it out together. My phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. House appraisal came back. Property value increased 8% since last year. Your instinct to keep it was financially sound. The house. I'd moved back in 3 months ago, after spending weeks getting rid of Michelle's presence, repainting rooms, replacing furniture, purging everything that reminded me of her contamination. It was mine again. Clean, honest. A place where Marcus and I could build new memories without the shadow of manipulation hanging over us. I'd kept Sarah's cherry tree, tended it carefully, watched it bloom this spring with white flowers that covered the branches like snow. Some things were worth preserving, worth protecting, worth fighting for. That evening, I had dinner with Richard and Ellen. Ellen's Alzheimer's had progressed. Some days she remembered me clearly. Other days I was a stranger she was polite to but didn't recognize. Today was a good day. She remembered me, remembered Sarah, remembered most of the conversation. That woman got 15 years? She asked when I told them about the sentencing. 15 years. Good. She stabbed at her rice with satisfaction. She deserved more. People who prey on grief are the worst kind of criminals. Mom's got opinions, Marcus said, grinning. Your mother always had opinions, Richard said fondly. That's where Sarah got her spine from. We ate and talked and laughed, 4 people bound together by love and loss and the determination to keep going despite everything. After dinner, I drove home to the house on Rosewood Drive, pulled into the driveway where I'd pulled in thousands of times before, walked through the door into the space that held 18 years of memories with Sarah, 17 years of watching Marcus grow up, and now the beginning of whatever came next. I made tea, sat in the living room where Sarah and I used to sit, pulled out my phone and scrolled through photos, old ones of us together, recent ones of Marcus at his graduation, pictures of the cherry tree in bloom, evidence of a life lived, imperfectly, painfully at times. But honestly, I thought about Michelle in her cell, beginning 15 years of confinement. Part of me felt vindicated. Part of me just felt sad for the lives she'd destroyed, for the person she could have been if she'd chosen differently, for all the wasted potential channeled into cruelty. But mostly, I felt free, free of the deception, free of the performance, free to grieve Sarah properly, to love my son openly, to exist without the constant vigilance that had defined the past 6 months. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Trevor Gaines. Christopher Wade gave me your number. I was one of Michelle's targets in 2019. I wanted to thank you for finishing what I started. Justice feels good. I texted back. It does. Thank you for your evidence. We couldn't have built the case without it. There's a group of us, former victims. We meet monthly via video call, support group kind of thing. You interested? I stared at that message for a long time. A community of people who understood exactly what I'd been through, who knew the particular shame and anger and confusion of being targeted by someone like Michelle. Send me the details. I'll be there. Around midnight, I went upstairs to the bedroom Sarah and I had shared. I'd slept there alone since moving back, reclaiming the space, making it mine again. On the nightstand was a photo of Sarah and me from our 10th anniversary. We were younger, happier, untouched by the cancer that would come 3 years later. Sarah was laughing at something I'd said, her head thrown back, her hand on my chest. I picked up the frame, traced her face with my finger. I'm okay now, I told her. It took a while, and I made some spectacular mistakes, but I'm okay. Marcus is okay. We're going to be okay. I set the photo back down, climbed into bed, and fell asleep. Without nightmares. Without fear. Without the weight of secrets, or lies, or performances. Just sleep. Deep. Honest. Healing. The next morning, I woke up early and went to the cherry tree. The blossoms were starting to fall, carpeting the grass beneath with white petals. Soon there would be fruit, small and tart, perfect for the jam Sarah used to make every summer. I'd never learned her recipe, but maybe this year I'd ask Ellen if she remembered it. Maybe Marcus and I could try making a batch together, carrying on the tradition in our own imperfect way. The sun was rising over the neighborhood, painting everything in shades of gold. Somewhere in the city, Marcus was sleeping in his dorm room. Somewhere, other victims of Michelle's crimes were waking up to their first day after justice. Somewhere, Michelle herself was waking up in a cell, facing 15 years of consequences for a lifetime of cruelty. And I was here, in the house I'd almost lost, under the tree Sarah had planted, building a life that was smaller than before, but more authentic, more mine. I'd lost Sarah to cancer. I'd nearly lost everything else to a con artist. But I'd fought back. I'd won. Not completely. Not perfectly. Grief and betrayal had left their marks, had changed me in ways that might be permanent. But I was still here, still standing, still capable of love and trust and hope, even if those things came harder now. Sarah would have called that winning. And maybe, finally, I could believe her. 2 years later, the cherry tree was heavy with fruit. Marcus and I stood beneath it with baskets, picking the small red cherries that Sarah had loved, continuing the tradition she'd started. Remember when Mom made us taste test like 15 different jam recipes? Marcus asked, reaching for a high branch. And we had to give serious feedback on each one. I smiled at the memory. She took her jam very seriously. She took everything seriously. Except herself. We worked in comfortable silence, the July sun warm on our shoulders. The house behind us looked different now. I'd finally finished renovating the kitchen, had replaced the old fence, had turned Sarah's garden into something I maintained myself, with varying degrees of success. Marcus was finishing his master's degree. I'd been promoted at work. We had dinner together every Sunday, just the two of us, keeping the tradition Sarah had established. And I'd started dating again, carefully, slowly, with eyes wide open and no illusions. Her name was Andrea. She was a high school teacher, a widow herself, someone who understood grief without trying to exploit it. We'd met at a support group for surviving spouses, had become friends first, and only recently started exploring something more. It was different from what I'd had with Sarah. Quieter, less consuming, but real, honest, built on a foundation of genuine connection rather than manufactured intimacy. You seeing Andrea tonight? Marcus asked, as if reading my thoughts. Tomorrow, movie and dinner, nothing fancy. I like her. She's good for you. Yeah? Yeah. She doesn't try to be Mom. She's just herself. That's important. From the mouth of my 20-year-old son, wisdom that had taken me years to learn. My phone buzzed. A reminder about the monthly support group meeting. The community of Michelle's former victims, now friends, now allies in healing. We'd heard through our lawyers that Michelle had tried to appeal her sentence. The appeal had been denied. She'd served the full 15 years. Good. Some people deserve second chances. Michelle Cross wasn't one of them. "That's probably enough cherries," I said, looking at our full baskets. "Ellen's expecting us at 3. We carried the fruit inside, washed it, began the careful process of making jam using Sarah's recipe. Marcus worked the stove while I prepared the jars, both of us falling into an easy rhythm. "Dad," Marcus said after a while, "I'm really proud of how you handled everything. The thing with Michelle, the aftermath, rebuilding your life. It couldn't have been easy." It wasn't. But I had help. You, Janet, the support group, the therapist. Nobody does hard things alone. Still, you could have just walked away, let her keep doing what she was doing, but you didn't. Your mother taught me to fight back, to not let cruelty win. I stirred the pot, watching the cherries break down into sweetness. Some lessons stick. Later, driving to Ellen and Richard's house with jars of fresh jam, I thought about how far I'd come. From the man who'd signed papers to sell his house and marry a stranger, to the man I was now, wiser, more careful, but still open to possibility, still capable of trust, even if it came with more questions than before, still capable of love, even if it looked different now, still here, still fighting, still building a life worth living. The grief would never fully go away. Sarah would always be the person I'd lost, the hole in my life that nothing could completely fill. But the hole wasn't all there was. There was also Marcus, brilliant and compassionate. There was Andrea, patient and real. There was the community of survivors I'd found, the friendships forged in shared trauma and mutual support. There was cherry jam and Sunday dinners and the possibility of tomorrow. Sarah would have called that more than enough. And finally, I agreed with her.